Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. I really hope you're all having a fantastic day. Today, we're diving into a brand new story, a fanfic called Jujutsu Kaisen, Death Trade. It's pretty wild, and I think you're going to love it. Let's get into it.
Chapter 1. Broken mind, I came to a halt in my never-ending lane of memories. Memories I could not recall perfectly, yet could not let go of either, as they were the only things anchoring me to what I once was. The memories of my origins were mostly fragmented. It was strange how I could recall a meme I once saw on social media sometimes better than my own life. But that had become my reality for as long as I could recall. Or perhaps only minutes had passed in my mind, which merely felt eternally stretched that I couldn't say anything for certain. My mind was just as big of a mess as my life once was. The only things anchoring me were those fragmented memories, eternally looping, never completed. Sometimes joyous, sometimes sorrowful. Yet one thing was certain, I couldn't let them go. If I did, I wouldn't even be able to recall who I was. I had long expected this to be my life, lost inside my own mind for eternity, until suddenly everything vanished. Everything came to a halt, and for the first time in what felt like forever, the world became visible, understandable, and real to me. I felt my breathing. I could hear. I could feel, smell, and see. Everything felt alive again. For the second time. I felt alive, until I realized I might not stay like that for long. Before I could fully come to terms with reality, the scene in front of me froze me in place. What I saw made me question whether I was still hallucinating or if this was a dream. Had I even had one of those recently? There were people, lots of people, all of them frozen just like me, standing still, their minds seemingly numb, as if they had lost the very cognitive ability to think. Is that what happened to me? I questioned it, but the answer felt eons away. Even thinking that much made my mind feel slow. Sluggish. Heavy. What's going on? Has time stopped? Is this another incomplete memory? Forming thoughts felt like a struggle, as if even thinking strained my brain. Just as I began to wonder if time had truly stopped, I felt a wisp of something flicker past me. Too fast to capture with my eyes. Yet every sense in my body told me something had moved around me fast. Extremely fast. Turning my eyeball alone felt like a Herculean effort. When I finally managed it, I saw that out of everything around me, one singular figure seemed to be moving. Earlier it had been nothing but a shadow whipping around, darting between dozens of people, moving with a speed that looked unrealistic outside modern cinema. I could only hold my breath in awe when that shadow stopped, and revealed its magnificent form. A man. A very handsome man, panting as he came to a halt. Blood smeared across his face. His sky-blue eyes looked like they contained the entire universe within them. His white hair made him the most dazzling figure among everyone present, as if time itself had stopped for everyone else just to showcase the magnificence of the man standing there. My eyes couldn't leave him. My mind failed to recall who he was. But my heart seemed to know. My half-frozen heart thumped harder the moment I saw the white-haired man. Is this love? No, can't be. I'm straight. Right? Damn these memories. But internally I knew it. It wasn't something so boring as love at first sight. No. Instead, I seem to know this. I know what's happening somehow. I've seen this before. I told myself that with certainty. My gut feeling insisted I had seen this scene before, yet my fragmented memories refused to tell me where. And then I saw blood. My mind finally registered the blood on his face. I finally realized where the blood came from, and it wasn't from the white-haired man. No, it came from the monsters he had fought, with great effort. I roamed my eyes around and saw the evaporating corpses of many such monsters around him, all slain by the panting man. Normally that realization should have calmed me down. Right, all the monsters were dead. The good side had won, but the relief I should have felt was nowhere to be found. My slightly elevated heart rate never returned to normal. This isn't right. I know this. Something is going to happen. I know it. And just as that thought crossed my mind, exactly what I feared took place. Behind the panting man appeared an object. A cube. Before either of us could react, the cube exploded, transforming into something I could only describe as an object straight out of a sci-fi movie or a high-budget horror show. It split into smaller parts, strangely enlarging while still connected to a fleshy substance at their core. They surrounded the man from one side, staring at the white-haired man with their newly revealed eyes. I knew this. I knew something would happen. It felt obvious, just as obvious as the need to move away from such an object. The white-haired man seemed to attempt exactly that, but he was stopped in his tracks by a voice behind him. "Yo, Satoru," a man in monk's clothing stood there. A tall man with long black hair tied behind his back and a stitch mark running across his forehead. "It's been a while." My eyes widened, the uneasy feeling in my chest magnified when I saw the man with the stitched forehead and the white-haired man, Satoru, pause in his tracks. "No, move from there. Don't stand there. Move." I wanted to shout, but my mouth had lost its voice. I knew something was wrong. Maybe it was my fragmented memories. Maybe it was just my instincts, but something big, something really bad was happening. For the first time, through sheer force of will, I truly moved my body. I tried to reach the white-haired man and push him out of the way, but I had overestimated how much, or to be exact, how little control I had over my newly awakened senses. I stumbled on the very first step, almost tumbling to the ground before barely managing to keep my footing. I forced my body forward, one step after another. My mind still buzzed from whatever had happened earlier. As if it had been overloaded. I wasn't fast enough. Within seconds, the object clanged around Satoru's body, pinning him down. "Satoru? How do I know his name is Satoru?" My mind reeled, still sluggish. "Oh, the dark-haired man called him that." "You're not him. Who are you?" Satoru shouted, trapped inside that thing. What happened next was even more nauseating. The black-haired man somehow opened his own head, revealing his brain, and the brain had a mouth. I shuddered at the absurdity of the situation, which meant the black-haired man was a monster too. No, not a monster. A curse. Even I didn't know why that word came to mind. Yet it did, just like the instinct that had warned me of danger earlier. The same instinct telling me that I knew what was happening here, that I had seen all of this before. Did I have to move? Suppressing the nausea and the pounding in my head, I moved forward, but not toward the two men. Instead, I moved the other way. Did I have to get out of here? Did my instinct screamed that this place was not safe? The ONL. Why saving grace so far was that no one had paid me any attention. Slowly, with all my effort, I made my way through the crowd of frozen people. My legs eventually carried me to a staircase. Despite not knowing where they led, I climbed them one step after another. Anything, as long as I got away from those monsters. No, those curses. Little did I know I was marching straight toward them. I took my time. Time my body desperately needed to feel blood coursing through it again. Time my brain needed to start functioning properly, and by the time I reached the top floor, I saw the same horrors I had been running from. Curses. Lots of curses. So many that I couldn't even see the exit on the other side anymore. My breath stopped. Breathing became heavy. My legs nearly gave out beneath me. What now? I dared not make any noise. If I did, I would die. For a moment I considered going back. Maybe if I acted like one of those frozen people I could survive. Maybe the monsters below wouldn't notice me like earlier. But my heart told me that would be gambling with my life. My instinct screamed that going back was even more dangerous than facing the row of monsters in front of me. Negativity flared inside me. Despair. Fear. Both of them were forms of negativity, and they triggered a chain reaction. One by one, every curse in front of me turned their heads toward me. I froze in place. They found me, and as if some silent signal had been given, all those curses rushed toward me at once. My scalp tingled. Curse you! Chapter 2. The sparks of black. A high-pitched shriek rang out as hundreds of cursed spirits chased after me while I ran for my life. The only thing in my mind right now was survival as I bolted through the station as fast as my 2 legs could carry me. Running away from cursed spirits, let alone hundreds of them, was not something a normal human could keep up for long. Thankfully, I wasn't normal. Ever since I faced those cursed spirits, I had felt a strange sense of power. The fear of dying, of being devoured alive, perhaps brought out a hidden potential I had never been aware of until today. Though that statement would be false, since I didn't quite remember anything about myself, let alone comment on my own potential. My memories were a mess. My mind was a mess. My body, my instincts, and this strange power that I instinctively seemed to know how to use were the only things keeping me alive. A giant rat-like cursed spirit almost bit my butt off when I poured more of that power I was running on into my legs for just a fraction of a second, increasing my speed enough to evade it. Again, most of it was instinct. My body moved before my mind could comprehend anything. Acting purely to protect my life, curse energy, that was the power I was using. How did I know? I had no idea. My memories were slowly restoring themselves, though clearly not fast enough considering the ever-approaching cursed spirits drawing closer every second. I wished I could at least recall my own name. At least then I would know who had died when the end came for me. I also wished I knew why this was happening to me, because I would like to file a long complaint when I went up there, or down for that matter. Will hell even file my complaints? A ridiculous thought at a time like this, but I couldn't help it. My mind was going crazy from the non-stop action I had never signed up for. As soon as I entered the upper floor, my eyes locked onto the exit to the floor above. If the number 2 beside the sign meant this was the second underground floor, then I was only 2 floors away from freedom. At least I wouldn't be locked up with these cursed spirits in this underground station anymore. That small hope was the only thing keeping me going. Until that hope was crushed. A giant centipede-like cursed spirit blocked the exit to the upper floor before I could even reach it. My eyes widened. Panic settled into my heart as my speed unconsciously slowed down for long enough for the cursed spirits behind me to catch up. The next second, as if consumed by a flood of cursed spirits, I was submerged beneath them. I couldn't understand why this was happening to me. Why was I here? I didn't know. But I knew one thing for certain. I wasn't supposed to die like this. Why me? Just as I thought I was done for, a memory appeared out of nowhere. Something I never thought would be possible to recall at the moment of my death, when almost everything in my mind was a blabbering mess. Suddenly one memory seemed comprehensible. Jujutsu Kaisen? What was that? I didn't know. The memories still weren't whole. They were still fragments, but they were clearer now, and that was the only thing I had. So I dove into them, hoping to find something, anything, that could help me survive, even if the chances were almost zero. Still I searched. Memories of people, humans born with extraordinary powers fighting against these cursed spirits. For millennia this fight had continued, over and over again. Gods knew how many humans had died at the hands of these cursed spirits. No one knew how many cursed spirits had been slain by humans with powers like mine. No. There was a term for that. I had just learned it. Sorcerers. Jujutsu sorcerers. Was I a jujutsu sorcerer? I didn't know. But I had to become one right now if I wanted to live. I dug deeper through the memories. I needed something, anything, that could save my life. The memories were fragmented, never complete, yet still enough for me to piece together what was happening. A never-ending war between humans and curses. A balance maintained by the world itself. And then there was him. The man downstairs. The one who broke that balance. The strongest one in this world. This was his story. And many others. I noticed something strange. I wasn't in those memories. I wasn't part of this world. Then I realized why I had felt. Something was wrong ever since I regained consciousness. Those memories showed what was happening and also what was yet to happen. Memories of the future. How? I knew the white-haired man, Satoru, was about to get captured by that black-haired man dressed like a monk. I knew what was about to happen next. I knew just how screwed I was if I didn't leave this city. None of the memory fragments did I see myself. It was as if I wasn't even meant to exist here. But that didn't matter right now. My biggest concern was finding a way out of this place. Otherwise, I was done for. Time passed. My body was crushed beneath hundreds of curse spirits fighting over who would get to eat me. Some gnawed at my legs, others pierced their grotesque hands into my head. The only reason I was still alive was because they were fighting each other over their claim to the prey. Infighting gave me some time, almost useless time. Yet somehow it was enough for me to figure something out from those memories. It still wasn't much. Most of it was instinctive. But I had figured something. Oh, you. No, don't die. I can't die here. I have to do something. Focus. Do what the boy in the memory did. Focus. Focus the energy. Fight back. I repeated those words to myself while trying to concentrate, even as my bones cracked under the pressure, even as I felt something biting into my flesh trying to rip it apart. I refused to get distracted. If I did, I would die. I only had one chance. I focused. More and more, until I could finally sense the power around me. It was leaking out regardless of my control. I had to control it, and it wasn't easy, but I had no other choice. Just as the infighting between the cursed spirits began to settle, just as they seemed to decide that eating me was more important than fighting each other, my eyes flashed open. With all the power left inside my body, I bet everything I had, even my life. I threw one very ordinary-looking punch upward at the first cursed spirit I could reach, and then it felt as if my punch shattered space itself. The air around my fist rippled. Then came a violent eruption of black lightning that tore straight through the cursed spirit above me while blasting the surrounding creatures away with a force comparable to a truck crashing into someone at 100 miles per hour. For a few moments, on a floor previously filled with swarming cursed spirits, an empty space appeared where none of them dared to approach. and at the center of that space was me. Lying on the ground. My fist still raised in the air. Sparks of black lightning crackled faintly around it. My mind felt like it had been struck by lightning as well, that I felt high on something completely unknown. Surely nothing on earth could make someone feel as if they had achieved nirvana the way I felt right now. The violent and unstable energy inside me from earlier had become calm. Docile almost. It moved exactly how I commanded it. It worked exactly how I wanted it to. Slowly, I stood up. My eyes were still dazed, still processing the phenomenon I had just learned was called a black flash. A phenomenon that occurs when cursed energy is applied within 1/millionth of a second after a physical hit. Besides its many benefits for a sorcerer, I personally gained something I desperately needed. Clarity. My mind finally snapped back into proper working order. My fragmented memories began to fall into place. The brain fog was gone. And now I knew what Jujutsu Kaisen was, but that didn't matter right now, not when hundreds of cursed spirits were staring at me with hungry eyes, ready to devour me alive. I pursed my lips. I had to get out of this situation before questioning the reality of my existence. Thankfully, I had also realized something else as well, that I wasn't as helpless as I had first thought. Fine, I muttered with a smirk. You guys want to fight? Good then. Come at me. That open declaration broke all hell loose. Hundreds of cursed spirits rushed at me like starving hyenas. I didn't panic. Instead, I brought both of my hands together in an unfamiliar yet strangely familiar hand sign. My index and pinky fingers folded inward while my ring and middle fingers extended upward. Both hands connected, the fingers intertwining to form a tent-like shape. Domain expansion, Death Trade. Chapter 3. First Trade Curse Technique. A very advanced form of cursed energy manipulation, refined to such a level that it can only be performed by certain individuals who develop a technique around it. Of course, it wasn't voluntary. It happened on its own. Luck and blood determined whether someone possessed a cursed technique or lacked one entirely. Most jujutsu sorcerers did not possess a technique, and the true potential of a sorcerer was often determined by the technique they developed. Some techniques were inherited from generation to generation. This was especially apparent in the great jujutsu clans like the Zenin, Kumo, and Gojo. However, there were also those who developed their techniques without any inheritance, and it was clear that I was one of them. But there was a difference. My technique was different from most techniques I could remember from those fragmented memories. Unlike most techniques, this one wasn't a standalone ability. If anything, most modern sorcerers upon facing a technique like this would likely give up immediately, simply because of what jujutsu had become in this era. A domain. A technique that used to be casual during the height of the golden era of jujutsu had now become the arsenal of only a few outstanding sorcerers because of how modern jujutsu sorcery had evolved. Nowadays, a domain had become an instant kill. Sure win weapon, unlike what it used to be in the past. So even I was surprised when I found myself calling out the same words I had always imagined saying after watching Jujutsu Kaisen. Domain expansion. Death Trade. A bright smile spread across my face as my mind tensed under the overwhelming pressure of opening my domain. A barrier erupted around me, filled with my own cursed energy and imbued with my cursed technique. This was the highest form of jujutsu, second only to reverse cursed technique. The entire second underground floor visible to me, along with every cursed spirit present, was engulfed by the barrier of my domain. And the moment the barrier closed, the sure hit effect of my domain activated. As4. My technique, it was right there in the name. Death Trade. A technique that allowed me to place trades upon myself or others. Unlike most cursed techniques, I could only use it inside my domain. It was completely domain-based. The moment my domain fully established itself, anything within the barrier that possessed cursed energy became subject to my trade through the sure hit effect. As for the trade. You guys want to fight me? Fine. I won't run anymore. And in return, come at me one by one. I'll fight all of you. The trade took effect. I would fight them all. There would be no running away, but every fight would be one-on-one. The domain's effect activated immediately. All the cursed spirits rushing toward me froze mid-motion as if time itself had stopped for them. They remained locked in place, but not all of them. Out of the corner of my eye, I noticed movement. One cursed spirit was still moving, and it was coming straight at me. The same centipede cursed spirit that had blocked my escape earlier. I took a long breath and exhaled slowly. This was the trade of my technique. Not the trade I had declared inside the domain, that was different. This was the natural trade of domain-based techniques in general. They were usually non-lethal compared to domains like Unlimited Void or Shrine, but that also made them easier to execute. They required far less cursed energy, and they placed far less mental strain on the user. Still, I had to fight my way through this. There was no other way out. At least now I would be fighting them one at a time. Cursed energy flared around my body. Adoma In had many functions. Aside from guaranteeing the sure hit effect of a technique, it also trapped targets inside its barrier so they couldn't escape, and it granted the user a boost of 120%. I was already experiencing the boost from Black Flash, and now it stacked with the domain's enhancement. Right now I was arguably in the best possible condition to fight. If I failed even in this state, then I was simply meant to die here. With my focus sharpened, I rushed toward the centipede cursed spirit with all my fury. I was ready to dismantle the damn thing for what it had done earlier. The centipede lunged first, eager to devour the human standing before it. Its long segmented body scraped across the floor of my domain while hundreds of hooked legs clattered like blades. The creature was easily twice my height when it reared up, its pale body twitching while rows of jagged mandibles clicked hungrily. I barely had time to think. The curse struck. A blur of chitin and teeth shot toward me. Instinct alone made me throw myself sideways. The mandibles snapped shut exactly where my head had been a moment earlier. I crashed onto the ground and rolled clumsily. It wasn't graceful. There was no hint of skill in my movements, fragmented as my memories were. I was certain there was nothing in them suggesting that I had ever been a fighter. At least my body didn't feel like one. My movements lacked the grace of a veteran who had survived countless life and death battles. No, mine were simply desperate. I pushed myself up, my heart hammering. The centipede twisted around with unnatural speed and rushed at me again, its body slithering across the domain floor like a living whip. I tried to punch it. The strike landed poorly against the creature's armored shell. Pain shot through my knuckles. Even with cursed energy reinforcement, it hurt like hell. The curse barely reacted. A second later, the centipede slammed into me and sent me skidding several meters across the ground. The air exploded out of my lungs. I coughed, forcing myself back to my feet. Okay, not the hard shell. That won't work. Target the underside. I grimaced when I noticed the hundreds of legs beneath its body. For a moment I almost considered attacking the shell again, but I knew better. Even if I didn't fully understand it yet, I could feel something changing. My technique was reinforcing me, strengthening my body, sharpening the flow of cursed energy within me. Inside my domain, I was stronger. The centipede lunged again. This time I didn't retreat. I stepped forward instead. Its mandibles snapped toward my throat. Instinctively, I raised my arm, cursed energy surging through the limb. The jaws clamped down on my forearm. Pain exploded through my nerves, but I didn't pull away. Instead, I grabbed the creature's head with my other hand. Raw cursed energy poured through my palm. It was the best I could do. I didn't know how to shape it. I didn't know how to control it properly either. But I could force it. And that was exactly what I intended to do. I forced it out through sheer willpower. The energy detonated. Between my fingers, the centipede's head cracked with a sickening crunch. Its body wrapped around me, hundreds of blade-like legs digging into my flesh as it tried to stop me. But I didn't stop. Pain screamed through my body. Still, I kept crushing. The creature thrashed violently across the domain floor before finally collapsing in twitching coils. I had literally crushed its skull with my bare hands. Silence followed. I stood there panting, bloodied and shaking. Then the corpse dissolved into black ash. I won? The thought wasn't a statement. It sounded more like a question. If I expected the monster to come back to life any second. I stared at my trembling hands. That actually worked. I was surprised my impulsive, instinctive action had succeeded. Around me, hundreds of frozen curses remained locked in place across the domain, waiting. And just as the first curse spirit died, the contract of the trade activated. Another frozen curse spirit began to move. One by one, I was supposed to fight all of them. The realization was almost terrifying. I swallowed. Still, even in this situation, there was hope. My domain was called Death Trade for a reason. But that part would come later. For now, I had to earn my living, literally. Next. The world shifted. The frozen sea of monsters remained motionless, but one of them began to move. A tall, twisted humanoid curse peeled itself free from the stillness, its body bent at impossible angles, its limbs dragging across the floor like a broken puppet. I clenched my teeth. This was going to be a long fight. Chapter 4, Jujutsu Sorcerers Jujutsu Kaisen. An anime I had watched, apparently in my last life. Because there was no possible way I wouldn't know if my own world had superpowers and someone named Gidge had made an anime about it.as for how I ended up in this world. That was anyone's guess that I couldn't recall it. Most of my memories had returned, but that didn't mean I remembered everything. Everything was still a mess. It felt like someone had broken a videotape, tossed all the pieces into the air, and then slowly picked them up one by one, sticking them back together with cheap commercial glue without bothering to check which piece belonged where. Perhaps a few more of those black flashes should have helped. I thought. Unfortunately, that wasn't something under my control. Landing a black flash depended largely on luck. It wasn't exactly reassuring to know that I had survived out of sheer luck. So for the sake of my sanity, I decided to consider it skill instead of luck. No matter how dangerous that assumption might be for my long-term health, I lay on the ground and my clothes were torn open. My body felt tortured. Countless small wounds covered my skin. I was exhausted to the bone. Fighting hundreds of cursed spirits back-to-back was a nightmare. It felt like it had taken forever. But somehow it hadn't. Some sort of time nonsense probably happened due to the domain being a separate subspace or something. I couldn't care less about those technical details right now. All I knew was that it felt like I had been fighting for hours, maybe even days. Yet outside the domain, only a few minutes had passed when my technique finally ended. I drew deep, desperate breaths like a man starved of oxygen. My heart was beating so violently it felt like it had a personal rivalry with a racing car engine. Blood soaked my clothes. All of it was mine, since the blood of cursed spirits evaporated almost immediately after. They died, and yet, surprisingly enough, I had no open wounds left. They had all healed by the time the final cursed spirit fell and my domain finally collapsed. I grimaced as I tried to move. My wounds might have healed, but the pain remained. With great difficulty, I pushed myself up and began limping toward the exit that I needed to get out of here. A quiet place to think, to figure things out. Forcing my aching body forward, I climbed one stair at a time toward the upper floors. Fortunately, the floor above me was completely clear of those monstrosities. I limped through it slowly, taking my time while my mind desperately tried to piece together my shattered memories. Before anything else, I'd really like to know my own damn name, I grumbled to myself. It was maddening that I couldn't remember who I was, yet I somehow knew I had just been fighting cursed spirits inside an anime world. Grumbling and muttering under my breath, I pushed forward until I reached the final floor. If I climbed this last staircase, I would reach the ground level of Shibuya Station. Surely once I reached the surface, I could get out of this entire madness, right? I couldn't have been more wrong. The moment I stepped onto the ground floor of Shibuya Station, I found three very recognizable faces standing there. Almost as if they had been waiting specifically for me. An old man wearing a traditional haori with a funny-looking mustache stood in the front, holding a wine gourd. Next to him stood a man wearing sunglasses and a fancy business suit. In his hand was what looked like a large kitchen knife wrapped carefully in cloth, and beside them stood a teenage girl around my age. She wore glasses, had black hair with a faint green tint, and was dressed in what looked like a school uniform. In her hand she held a large naginata. I blinked. My memories of Jujutsu Kaisen were still fragmented. Since arriving in this world I had focused almost entirely on surviving. That focus had saved my life, and it might continue to do so. So when I saw them, I instantly felt a strange sense of familiarity. I had seen them somewhere in my memories, but I couldn't recall their names. A civilian? The girl narrowed her eyes and asked. No, he's a curse user, the man in the suit replied calmly. Those glasses of yours might help you see cursed spirits, Maki, the old man snorted from behind them while taking a sip from his gourd. But they're useless against curse users like this one. Maki, I could only blink as I mentally stored that name for later. Instinctively, I raised my hands. Hello. Are you guys Jujutsu sorcerers? I'm not hostile. Could you help me out here? I asked, raising both my hands so they could clearly see them. Silence fell over the small group. They stared at me like I had just said something completely insane. Are you serious right now? The girl, Maki, growled, glaring at me angrily. Yeah, I nodded innocently. You have cursed energy. Do you really expect us to believe that lie? The suited man said calmly. Honestly, his calm tone was a bit unnerving. Well, about that, I scratched my head awkwardly. Would you believe me if I said I just awakened this power, and then got chased by those cursed spirits? Even I wasn't sure if I would believe that story, The three of them exchanged silent looks. None of those looks filled me with confidence that I could only hope their decision didn't involve taking me hostage. Or worse, eliminating the source of the problem. "Who are you?" the suited man finally sighed and asked. "Who am I? I wish I knew." I rummaged desperately through my fragmented memories, trying to find anything about my past life or even this body's life. All I wanted was a name. When I took too long to answer, the tension in the air grew noticeably thicker. I can't quite remember," I admitted slowly. "All I remember is waking up and seeing a bunch of people frozen like statues. I was one of them. I saw this one man with white hair killing curses. His name was Satoru." I pointed vaguely behind me. That didn't relax them. If anything, they became even more tense. "You saw Gojo?" the suited man asked sharply. "His name was Satoru," I replied. "At least that's what the black-haired man in monk robes called him." "Black-haired man in monk robes, you mean Ghetto?" The suited man frowned. Ghetto. Another name to remember. Honestly, with the state my brain was in, I doubted I could keep track of all these names. Come to think of it, weren't they speaking Japanese? Not only could I understand them, I was replying in Japanese as well. "I don't know," I shrugged apologetically. "I just remember the black-haired guy calling the pretty white-haired man Satoru." The suited man muttered quietly to the others. "Only Ghetto calls Gojo by his first name like that. I can't think of any other black-haired man in monk robes who would." "But that's impossible," Maki said immediately. "That man died last year during the night parade of 100 demons." "What else do you remember?" the suited man asked me. Sorry, but I didn't catch your name," I said awkwardly. "Since I can't even remember mine, I can't quite properly introduce myself." The suited man paused, then he sighed and introduced himself. "I am Kento Nanami, a grade 1 Jujutsu sorcerer. This is Maki Zenin, a grade 4 Jujutsu sorcerer. And this is Mahito Zenin, a supreme grade 1 sorcerer and the head of the Zenin clan." Now that's a reliable man, I thought. "Don't call me that, Nanami," Maki snapped. "And you, just call me Maki." "Okay, just Maki," noted. "Now then," Nanami continued. "Tell us everything you remember about Satoru." As he spoke, he seemed to be observing me more carefully. Only now did he seem to notice my torn clothes and the blood covering my body. Did I also notice something else? The person beside him wasn't exactly a man. He looked more like a boy around Maki's age. Suddenly my claim of having just awakened my powers and losing my memory probably sounded slightly more believable. Just a little. Well, I thought for a moment. I saw him get captured by something. A strange object. It looked like a cube at first. Then it suddenly opened into something else entirely and trapped the white-haired guy. I actually remembered the name of that object, something like the prison realm, but that knowledge came from my fragmented memories of the anime. It definitely wasn't something a newly awakened civilian should know, so I wisely kept my mouth shut. Not that they noticed. By now they already knew Gojo had been sealed. What they didn't know was how. Now they had a clue, but that created a new problem. What were they supposed to do with me? I could be lying, but they also couldn't just leave me here. The cursed energy they sensed from me was slightly stronger than that of an average sorcerer. So maybe I could be useful later. Nanami seemed ready to order me to follow him outside and report to someone, probably the managers, but before he could speak, Mahito interrupted him. "Forget the boy. We have bigger problems." He lazily lifted his gourd and pointed forward. "Isn't that right, cursed spirit hiding over there?" All of our heads snapped toward the direction he was looking, and sure enough, a red, octopus-like cursed spirit was standing there. Chapter 5. A special grade. If I hadn't known any better, I might have almost called that red baby octopus cute. With those big red tentacles, those large doodly eyes, and the fat tears it was shedding, it was definitely cute. If not for what happened next, it suddenly vomited out what I could only describe as dozens of skeletal remains from its stomach, splattering them across the station's cold hard floor as if it were nothing. Once again I was reminded why cursed spirits were so dangerous. Looks were irrelevant. They were all naturally wired to hate humanity and kill humans. The focus immediately shifted away from me. A dangerous, potentially special grade curse spirit was far more threatening than a newly awakened curse user. Mahito was the first one to move. No one even saw when he did. 1 second he was standing right next to us. And the next second the old man was already beside the cursed spirit. Just as Mahito froze the cursed spirit, which looked eerily like it had been trapped inside a Still frame or photograph, sudden memories surged inside my head the moment I saw it. Projection sorcery. I muttered the name to myself as fragmented memories roughly explained how that curse technique worked. The next second the curse spirit was airborne, sent flying by Mahito's fist. What followed was an absolute beatdown. Mahito completely dominated the curse spirit, yet despite that, a lingering fear remained in the back of my mind. Something was about to happen. Watching Mahito handle the curse spirit so easily gave me an uneasy feeling. This wasn't how things happened in those fragmented memories, and sure enough, the curse spirit, more accurately the curse womb that hadn't yet properly formed, suddenly began evolving like a Pokémon. Its body transformed into a humanoid figure with a red shell and an octopus-like head. The cursed energy around it spiked so violently that everyone present instantly recognized it. A special grade curse spirit. You. Why are you still here? Get out of here. Run, Nanami spoke first. Hearing him say that, I couldn't help but once again feel how reliable the man was. However, before I could even take a single step, the cursed spirit summoned gallons of water that flooded the entire ground floor of Shibuya Station. The water surged like a tidal wave, sweeping away everything in its path. Maki had to drive her Naginata into the wall and stand on top of it to keep herself from being washed away. Nanami somehow managed to reach higher ground as well. Mahito created a wall of those same frozen frames to shield himself. Me? I had none of that. I wasn't even ready when the water came flooding across the floor. I desperately struggled to stay afloat, fighting against the current with every ounce of strength I had. My cursed energy began working purely on instinct, helping me survive the raging flood. Before I even realized what was happening, Nanami appeared beside me. He grabbed me by the collar like a wet puppy and lifted me up before placing me safely on higher ground once the water finally receded. I'll say it again. Get out of here if you don't wish to die a horrible death, Nanami said firmly. This time his voice carried far more force. Then he completely ignored me and dashed straight toward the cursed spirit. By the time I regained my bearings, the battle had already resumed. The cursed spirit was getting thoroughly cooked by three incredible sorcerers of the modern era. Although, in truth, it was Mahito and Nanami doing most of the work. Maki mostly acted as a distraction, but the girl still persisted until the very end. Watching them fight, for a brief moment I forgot how dangerous the situation truly was. Only one thought echoed inside my head. Can I do that as well? The longing for power. It was a desire ingrained within humanity since ancient times, especially when people confronted their own mortality and realized how insignificant they truly were in the grand scheme of the world. And as that desire surfaced, more fragmented memories connected to the current conflict emerged in my mind. I end those memories. The fight unfolded almost exactly like it was happening now, almost perfectly the same, except I wasn't there in those memories. The good side was winning. If the sorcerers could even be called the good side. You never really knew what counted as good or evil in this world, but they were definitely better than cursed spirits. So for now, I was willing to give the Jujutsu sorcerers the benefit of the doubt. At least until my memories proved otherwise. My mind replayed those memories one by one. Fragmented as they were, it was difficult to properly understand them, trying to find the correct order. Their relevance and whether they were even reliable was exhausting. But at the end of my short trip through fragmented memory lane, my eyes suddenly widened. It felt like death itself was rushing toward me. Wait, don't go near him. He's about to. My warning came too late, way too late. The next second the entire world around us changed. It was as if someone had teleported us. The station was gone. In its place stood a tropical beach on some distant island. Sand stretched beneath my feet. Ocean waves rhythmically crashed against the shore. Above us was the bluest sky I had ever seen in my life, with soft white clouds lazily drifting across it. This place was the very definition of a vacation island. A domain. Mahito's eyes widened. Then he immediately took a stance, cursed energy swirling around him like a coiling snake. Nanami and Maki both wore grim expressions as they realized what had just happened. We were in serious trouble. With the sure hit effect of the domain active and none of them possessing a simple domain, they were as good as dead. At least Nanami and Maki were. Mahito, as the head of the Zenin clan and one of the strongest grade 1 sorcerers, possessed his own countermeasure against domains, flowing blossom emotion. A technique passed down within the great Jujutsu families, but would that save him from the cursed spirit's attacks? No, the cursed spirit was intelligent. It could think. Dagon. That was the name it had previously mentioned while arguing with Mahito earlier. Now it looked around at all of us and quickly reached a conclusion. The old man is the real threat. I'll put 70% of my power into him. The rest goes to the man in the suit. It completely ignored both Maki and me. Maki barely possessed any cursed energy, and I apparently looked like a complete amateur despite having enough cursed energy to survive for a while. Soon countless aquatic Shikigami began swarming toward Nanami and Mahito. Nanami struggled to deal with the sure-hit effect of Dagon's domain since he had no anti-domain technique. Mahito fared much better thanks to Flowing Blossom Emotion. Unlike anti-domain barriers, that technique countered the sure-hit effect. By using the user's own cursed energy, however, it only repelled the guaranteed hit effect. It didn't block actual physical attacks. One moment Mahito was holding his ground against the endless aquatic creatures appearing around him. The next moment a massive red fish, part of the curse itself, lunged straight toward his face. He couldn't react in time. He was blasted backward. Dagon immediately followed. Ready to eliminate the strongest member of the human side, he raised his hand, preparing to unleash even more Shikigami. But then he suddenly froze, his eyes widened. My sure-hit effect? From somewhere far away, a voice echoed across the domain. Domain expansion. Dagon's tropical island illusion began to tremble under the overwhelming force of another domain establishing itself. Chapter 6, A Domain Clash. Domain Expansion, I shouted, my hands already forming the sign for my domain. My memories were still spotty at best, but I swear somewhere in that clusterfuck of a memory lane I had heard that white-haired man, Satoru Gojo, say that the best way to battle a domain was to deploy your own domain. I was in no condition to question a man who looked like the artist burned half of his budget just to design him, so I did what he said. As soon as I realized my domain was the key. And thankfully I wasn't attacked during that brief window like Mahito and Nanami. I deployed my domain almost instantly. Death Trade. The environment rippled. Dagon's domain split apart midway, making way for my own domain to manifest. The bright blue sky and sandy beach were overwritten by a dark, ink-like surface. A massive cross manifested behind me, like the kind used to mark a grave. The only unique part about the giant cross was the two platforms hanging from each arm of the cross, indicating measurement, or perhaps balance for a trade. Was a traditional weight scale made on a cross. What? The boy can use a domain? Mahito and Nanami were the first to lose their composure. After all, sorcerers capable of using a domain could be counted on a single hand in the modern era. There were currently only 3 publicly known ones: Satoru Gojo, of course, Yuki Tsukumo, and Kinji Hikari. This was mostly because Yuta hadn't revealed his domain publicly yet. And many other sorcerers weren't even on the Jujutsu higher-ups' radar yet. Someone like Higuruma, for example. But even so, simply being able to open a domain automatically placed a sorcerer at grade 1 level by principle alone. TCH. I knew the brat was trouble, Maki grumbled to herself. Even she understood what it meant to have someone with a domain fighting against a special grade curse spirit that also possessed a domain. A difference between life and death that I thought mostly ignored their reactions. More accurately, I didn't have the mental capacity to focus anywhere else while maintaining the domain clashed. My black domain slowly overtook almost half of Dagon's tropical island domain, covering half the world inside the barrier in darkness as if the sun itself had been eclipsed by my presence. Death had arrived. Midway through the clash, however, our domains seemed to lock into a natural battle of dominance. Perhaps Dagon had regained control of his collapsing domain halfway through. Or maybe this simply meant that both of our domains were refined enough to prevent either one from completely overpowering the other. I should have known. Dagon's voice turned cold. You weren't fighting back even though you had more cursed energy than the man in the suit. So you're the key that handles the domain. I shall kill you first. Wait, he has more CE than Nanami? Maki snapped. Dagon didn't look pleased about me erasing the sure-hit effect of his domain. One moment the red-shelled octopus monster stood on the far side of the domain. The next moment he was right in front of me. His fist came forward, ready to rip my head off in one clean strike. Even my reaction time wasn't fast enough to comprehend what had happened. But Dagon's fist suddenly stopped 2 inches away from my face. His body froze, turned into a frame, and then he was violently kicked away, sent flying back to his original position. My breath caught in my throat. For a moment I genuinely thought I was dead. but in the nick of time, old man Mahito appeared and saved the day. Ha 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 ha, brat, you really are full of surprises, aren't you? Mahito laughed loudly. Ha 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 ha. Say, would you like a bride? What are your thoughts on marriage? What about Maki over there? Don't get it wrong, with her stiff face she got a great rack underneath. He patted my back while laughing. Each slap felt like my spine was about to shatter into pieces. And where the hell did marriage even come from? One looked on the side and it was evident by the look alone the girl was bloody ready to murder someone. Mahito didn't even pay attention to the said girl he wished to marry of, he just casually took another sip from his gourd. That was definitely wine. The man was drinking during a special grade fight. Even though he had just saved my life, I didn't exactly feel reassured by his presence. You! Nanami materialized beside us as well, but he didn't look nearly as good as Mahito though. He was covered in blood, but at least still standing. Nanami stood beside me while facing Dagon on the other side of the domain. You should have told us you could use a domain, Nanami scolded. His voice sounded half relieved and half annoyed that I had no idea what to say, that it wasn't like we had enough time earlier to sit down and have a deep conversation. Nanami didn't wait for my reply though. Whatever I said probably would have sounded like nonsense to him anyway. Instead, he asked a single question. How long can you maintain your domain? He didn't even ask if I could win the clash, that he only needed me to hold it long enough for them to kill the special grade curse spirit. I don't know, I replied, breathing heavily. This is only the second time I've used this technique. I'll try my best to endure as long as possible. My mind was already running on overdrive just to maintain the domain clash. Surely the curse spirit had to be dealing with something similar, right? Special grade or not, maintaining a domain had to be taxing. That's more than enough, Nanami nodded. He then glanced toward Mahito, who was mostly fine aside from a few minor wounds. Neither of them said a word, yet somehow it felt like they completed an entire conversation with that single glance. Maki, Nanami called. You are to protect him at all costs. If his domain falls, we are as good as dead. Make sure nothing happens to him. Mahito and I will deal with the special grade spirit. Maki had already moved beside us. Her eyes roamed dangerously over my body as if she were sizing me up. Perhaps she was already planning how many bones she would break once this was over for hiding my cursed technique, that I could only gulp and try to bury that line of thought. I definitely didn't need a sexy, potentially serial killer teenage girl hunting me down. I want to fight, Maki said bluntly. You can't even damage his shell. You'll just hold us back, Nanami replied immediately. Stay here and protect him. If he goes down, we all die. Nanami wasn't budging. Maki's eyes turned cold, but there was clearly a helpless look in that face. Nanami didn't change his decision though. It was the most practical solution available. For once, even Mahito seemed to agree. By now Dagon had already recovered, and he clearly didn't like what he was seeing. Those human sorcerers were protecting the one person clashing with his domain. So damn annoying, he muttered. Mahito was right. Humans are so annoying. He launched himself toward us. Mahito and Nanami moved at the same time. Maki clicked her tongue beside me but didn't disobey her orders. She firmly positioned herself in front of me with her naginata in hand, eyes tracking every movement of the cursed spirit. My focus returned to the domain clash. From what little I understood, domain battles were mostly decided by refinement. What exactly refinement meant? God only knew, but since my domain was far less lethal than Dagon's, shouldn't I have some kind of advantage? It makes sense if normal logic is applied. Then why were we evenly matched? I couldn't understand it. Why, maintaining my domain like this was painful, that I could probably keep this going for a while, unless Dagon's domain suddenly began overwhelming mine, but that would mean placing my life entirely in the hands of Nanami and Mahito, and I wasn't comfortable with that. Come on. There has to be something I can do here. I gritted my teeth. The best possible outcome would be figuring out how to overwhelm Dagon's domain. But to do that, I needed to refine my domain. How the hell was I supposed to do that? Chapter 7, Domain Refinement. The pressure inside the overlapping domains was suffocating. I could feel both of them grinding against each other like two storms colliding. The oceanic weight of Dagon's domain pressed down from all directions, waves of cursed energy trying to drown everything inside it. Both domains were actually equally strong, holding equally to their ground. To be honest, I stood there with my domain hand signed steady because that was the only thing I could do. I was no fighter. Fending off those 100 or so curses was only because I could fight them one by one inside my domain. Under a buff from the domain and the previous black flashed, I can't fight a special grade curse like this red guy here. My head throbbed as I forced more cursed energy into the barrier. The domain barely moved. More cursed energy wasn't making any difference. More wasn't the solution here. What is this refinement exactly? In front of me, I heard Maki's voice. Focus on the domain. We'll handle the curse. I know. Because if you guys can't, then I'm done for. It was precisely because I knew that I can't fight that cursed spirit myself that I wished to figure out a way to win this domain clash. My only advantage was my domain-based technique. If I can't even win at domain clashes, then I'm as good as dead. No matter the case, I have to figure out how to make my domain more refined. Currently, there wasn't anything besides that which I was good for. Ahead of us, Dagon hovered above the water that leaked through the cracks of his collapsing sea. The curse shrieked in anger as its perfect domain was being restrained. Two figures rushed it before it could fully react. Mahito moved first. He blurred forward so fast my eyes almost lost him. One moment he stood beside Nanami, the next he had already reached Dagon. A palm strike landed against the curse's side with a thunderous crack. Dagon's body twisted violently from the impact, but it wasn't alone for even a second. Nanami followed immediately behind. His cleaver swung downward with precise brutality. The blade struck exactly where it needed to. His ratio technique doing critical damage. A violent tear split across Dagon's body as cursed energy exploded from the strike. The curse screamed, tentacles lashing wildly through the distorted domain. One of them shot toward me. Maki stepped in front of me instantly. The blade in her hand flashed once. The tentacle hit the ground in 2 pieces. Keep the barrier up, she said sharply. As if it were that easy, sweat dripped down my face. Not out of the domain strain of forcing my newborn domain to clash against Dagon's, the mental load was there but not that bad. The real load came from trying to figure out how this refinement worked. In the distance, Mahito was already moving again. His movements became a stuttering blur, frames of motion skipping through space as he struck Dagon again and again. Nanami didn't waste the openings. Every time the curse staggered, his blade cut deep into another weak point. They fought like they had done this 100 times. I for a while just observed their battle, not getting how this refinement shit worked, until my mind couldn't conjure any more memory fragments about domains. Everything about domains I knew from Jujutsu Kaisen I saw in the last few seconds, and now everything was just repeating. So, it's either I don't remember what refinement is or the anime never talked about it. Either way, I knew that I'm not getting anything from the busted up memories of mind. I didn't give up though. If the answer wasn't inside, then I'll look outside. My life and death depended on it. I simply defaulted to observing my domain itself, trying to figure out what more I can do to make it more refined. What was there to refine in this? I took it one by one. First, the barrier itself. It was in clash against Dagon's. Second, the cursed energy usage. I was needing a steady CE output to maintain it. However, Dagon didn't have to stand around for that. He was doing that while fighting. Third, the sure hit effect of the domain. His had to be those Shikigami. Mine was the forced trade. What more? My eyes frantically roamed around. The barrier was harder to figure out when being clashed into another. However, only at times like this one can see its structural stability. Stability. My eyes snapped at those words. I observed more keenly. And sure enough, the stability wasn't on point. My domain seemed to waver, unlike Dagon's. Why? Why would it waver? I pondered, the stress of what was going on with Mahito and Nanami killing my focus. I had to force myself to calm down and think again. What would cause my domain to waver unlike Dagon's? Could it be CE output, like a bad electrical connection or internet stability? Those were my only points of reference at what could be going on here, so I tried. Closing my eyes, suppressing my panic, I reached out to the energy inside me. After hitting that black flash, I felt like it was completely under my control, but I never actually tried control it, didn't have the time. Earlier it was all instinctive, so all I need is a stable connection, a stable CE output. I reached deep inside the core of my cursed energy and told it to flow steadily. No need to rush, no need to overflow nor hold back, flow like how it's supposed to flow, and instantly I felt my CE much calmer. And when I opened my eyes, I saw the strain on my mind to constantly hold up the domain was gone. Looking back at the edges of my domain, I saw it was stable, no wavering anymore. It worked! So that's what it means by refinement. Dagon, fighting both Mahito and Nanami, also seemed to feel this when the mental load of his own domain increased a bit as my domain stabilized. He is figuring out the domain-mid-domain clash. Dagon growled and put in more effort to get by both Nanami and Mahito. Mahito and Nanami didn't get the sudden urgency from the special grade spirit. However, they weren't letting it go beyond them. They too pushed past their limits. Back where Maki and I were, I could practically see Maki trembling to go and join the battle. The distaste apparent on her face to hold back while others fought, that I couldn't get her eagerness and I didn't wish to know about it either. I just shook my head and once again went back to my own domain. What more, the barrier itself. Its durability and consistency, that I just observed it, trying to find anything I can improve on demand. I couldn't do anything about the durability. It was just like any other domain, at least it was very similar to Dagon's, but consistency. That was definitely better on Dagon's side. I could see certain parts of my domain barrier were weaker while certain sides stronger. The power and structural stability wasn't balanced, resulting in certain parts overpowering Dagon's domain, pushing it back even further than halfway while the rest were dragged back by his domain. This resulted in an uneven push by my domain when it clashed with his. So I did my best to fix that. First, intentionally reducing the power of the barrier push where it could one-sidedly extend, single-handedly pushing Dagon's domain back until the entire domain was in a circular structure on one line. That required me to almost pull back my domain by 1/3. Oi, what are you doing? Focus the domain, you brat, or else we're cooked. Maki shouted immediately, seeing my domain was getting pushed back, her knuckles turning white by how strongly she gripped her naginata. Even Mahito and Nanami gritted their teeth, thinking that I was reaching my limit, and pushed themselves against Dagon even further. Dagon was arguably the only one who didn't think I was losing. He could feel it. I intentionally pulled back the barrier of the domain. But why? Was his question, until he understood why. Once my domain barrier was once again back into a complete circular structure at the outline of the domain clash, I equally pushed back the domain once again against Dagon's domain, with its entire circumference getting equal power output and equal push from my side. The blackish sky of my domain slowly and steadily pushed back the sunny domain of Dagon, easily covering the lost ground and then steadily pushing it even further back. For the first time, Dagon's eyes widened as he hurriedly backed off from both Nanami and Mahito, forced to stand with both of his hands forming his own domain sign to stop his domain from being pushed back. Nanami and Mahito didn't get it, but they could see it. The black sky was taking over the sunny one, which was a good thing. Don't know what that brat's doing, but he better keep doing that. Mahito chuckled, panting and exhausted, blocking a special grade for this long. Nanami was in an even worse state. His earlier wounds had worsened and he too panted with clothes soaked in blood. Come on, this is our chance. Nanami saw the cursed spirit had pulled back after whatever the boy did. This might be their only chance to kill the cursed spirit. And indeed Dagon had to pull back, because now both domains were reaching a similar degree of refinement. And I was actively holding my domain in its hand sign. He might lose more ground in the domain clash if he didn't hold back his own domain sign and focus on the clash. Damn you! He roared, pouring more CE to push back my domain, and I could only grin. It was only thanks to observing my domain and then comparing it to his that I improved this much. Now, since both sides were on their back foot, Mahito and Nanami would have the advantage. They rushed at Dagon simultaneously, ready to end the spirit or waver his focus until his domain collapsed. However, this was the exact same time both domains wavered like someone threw a pebble into a calm lake's surface. The violent rippling of the domain indicated a sufficient shift which I wasn't ready for, and if Dagon's unmoving state was any indication, he wasn't responsible for this either. It was actually something else entirely. From the water further away from Dagon's side, a fountain of black water erupted, and from inside emerged a boy wearing quite similar clothes as Maki. A third domain. My eyes bugged with incredulity. Why now? Chapter 8. The anomaly. Then the pressure shifted. A third presence forced its way into the clashed. My vision flickered as another domain manifested between the grinding barriers. It wasn't stable like mine or Dagon's. It was rough, incomplete, dark shadows spreading across the ground like ink bleeding through paper. I didn't recognize it. Of course I didn't. God knows I just needed downtime to piece all my fragmented memories back together and know what I was working with here so badly. A boy stood at its center. Black hair. Focused eyes. and clothes similar to Maki's that I didn't bother digging through the memories I still hadn't fully sorted out. If he looked like he belonged with them, that was enough for now that I kept Death Trade active and my attention remained locked on Dagon's domain pressing against mine. The moment I shifted my focus, the stalemate would break. Beside me, Maki reacted instantly. "What the hell are you doing?" she snapped. Her voice cracked like a whip across the battlefield. "This is the worst possible time to open another domain." The newcomer looked genuinely confused. Megumi really wasn't sure what he was getting into when he forced his own half-baked domain to enter inside the clash between two domains. He only did it to save his friends, that it wasn't easy either. The clash meant that there was more pressure on him to make an opening with his domain. It really took him much longer than expected to break inside. His eyes moved quickly across the scene. Mahito was a blur, hammering Dagon from one side with relentless speed. Nanami moved like a metronome of violence, every strike precise and brutal. All Dagon could do was let his Shikigami faint while he focused on his domain. Though considering the bright sunny domain of the cursed spirit seemed to be Shrin. King ever so slightly by the second meant that whatever they were doing was working. Understanding flashed across the boy's face almost immediately. He didn't argue. Instead, he reached behind his shoulder and pulled out a weapon. For a split second I thought he was attacking. "Uncertainty does that to you." The weapon flew through the air. Maki caught it cleanly. Playful cloud. A 3-section staff, quite like a nunchuck. I registered that and then ignored it. False alarm. Then the boy exhaled slowly and the shadowy domain around him began to collapse. Smart. Because I could see if he hadn't done that, then it would have happened sooner or later. Grinding both my and Dagon's domains, he must have realized the same thing Maki had shouted. 3 domains colliding in the same space would only destabilize everything. The balance was already fragile that he was about to move, about to rush forward and join Mahito and Nanami. But something else slipped through. It came from the boy's fading domain. First, I thought it was just another shadow. Then it stepped forward. A man. A tall and very muscular man. And by what little I had learned about cursed energy so far, I couldn't sense him at all. Maki was quite similar, but I could sense her, albeit with difficulty. This one though, I couldn't sense his presence with cursed energy. Like he had no cursed energy. Is he a friend or a foe? For half a second no one moved, then the man moved fast. So fast in fact that he almost felt like he was teleporting. Much like how Mahito does, but in his case it's still possible to tell where he is going by his CE. Here though there was nothing to track the man with. He didn't hesitate. Didn't ask questions. Didn't even glance at the rest of us. He went straight for the special grade curse spirit. The curse barely had time to react before the man appeared in front of it like a ghost breaking through space itself. Both Mahito and Nanami were stunned at the sudden arrival of someone they couldn't sense. Both paused in their tracks. His fist crashed into Dagon's face. The impact was monstrous. Dagon's entire body folded from the force before being blasted backward across the shallow ocean of its own domain. As soon as Dagon went airborne, my domain felt like the restriction around it was lightening. Oh, what the hell? I didn't know the man, didn't know whether he was friend or foe, but he was beating the curse. So for now he was with us. My grin spread wide across my face, knowing this was my golden opportunity. I pushed my domain against Dagon's wavering domain, which started to break apart when Dagon wasn't actively holding it together. The curse screamed in fury, tentacles exploding outward. The man didn't even flinch. He simply tilted his head slightly, eyes narrowing at Dagon like a predator finally finding something worth hunting, and before anyone could respond, he attacked again, and above them. The sunny sky got covered by darkness. Another hit from the man to that spirit and his domain was gone. My domain had finally completely overshadowed the area and was fully established, and now the sure hit. Death trade. Dagon, including everyone's presence inside the domain except the man who I couldn't sense and who most likely wasn't under the sure hit effect of my domain, suddenly felt their minds enlightened by knowledge of the trade I had set up. I shall take no part inside this domain, and in return, you trade away your cursed technique. No more cursed technique. It was a hastily made and very unrefined trade. However, by putting myself out of the fight altogether, it made the trade worth it, since the balance of the trade was more than enough to justify it. Why? Because inside the domain anyone could attack me and I could die, while I couldn't fight back. I had risked my life in order to take away the cursed spirit's curse technique. What I didn't think through was that besides Dagon, everyone else also lost their technique at the same time. Nanami felt his CE. It was there, but suddenly he could no longer see the ratios of his technique. Mahito couldn't manifest frames either, and so was Megumi, who could no longer summon Shikigami or manipulate shadows. What is this cursed technique? Nanami muttered with a baffled look on his face. It's the sure hit effect of that guy. He took away our techniques. What kind of technique does he have? Megumi felt like his very understanding of jujutsu knowledge was being challenged. What kind of technique was that? A technique that locks away others' techniques. You brat. Mahito was the first one to snap out of the shock. He roared, in fact. Think before you use your technique. We are inside the sure hit effect of the domain as well. How else are we going to fight that special grade without our techniques? Maki might have been the only one who was completely unaffected. If anything, this brought the ball right into her park. This domain was quite suitable for her. The worst affected was Dagon though, because he was currently facing that man who, surprisingly, without having any cursed energy signature, was beating the shit out of a special grade curse spirit, and now Dagon couldn't even use his technique. Needless to say, he was cooked. Chapter 9, Volcano A Head Crack. First was a single crack, then multiple, until finally the entire structure crumbled away as if it never existed and my domain collapsed, not out of getting overpowered or losing a clash against another's domain, but because it simply achieved what it was deployed to do. Inside the domain were 4 Jujutsu sorcerers. One freak of nature who didn't have a drop of cursed energy in him, yet he just speed blitzed a freaking special grade curse spirit, inside the cursed own domain, mind you, even though it didn't fully establish, and then there was me, gawking at the man in the oversized sweatshirt like he was the monster he truly was. I just hoped that, by the way Maki and the others were looking at him, it wasn't the look of, who the hell is he, or shit we need help, but instead, look. He is so cool. What I meant to say was that I hoped this man in the sweatshirt, who had just turned that special grade into minced meat, was a friend rather than a foe. If it wasn't obvious by the way they were on guard against that man, then perhaps I was being a little too optimistic. The man got up. The 3-sided red weapon which he forcefully stole from Maki and turned into a giant-sized toothpick lay discarded after he killed that red curse spirit. He literally stabbed the spirit to death, thousands of stabs within those few seconds. The man was terrifying. He turned, and I saw a noticeable shift in the stance of the others around me, everyone on their guard, and the tense atmosphere was enough to give me my answer. Perhaps we can offer a parley, I offered, trying to reduce the tension, but it was for nothing. The next second, I saw the man disappear from his place, not move, not run, outright disappear. That was how fast he moved. Maki, Mahito, Nanami, and that new kid who joined midway, jolted out a tad bit too late before the man once again appeared, this time right next to the new kid's side, grabbing him by the collar. He threw him out of the window with such force that the kid was sent flying even after he hit the glass, broke through it, and still kept going. And before any of the rest of us could move, the man once again disappeared. He too was after the raven-haired boy. I just blinked, part confused, part relieved that he didn't come for me. And if the others' reactions were any indication, they weren't that different. So he wasn't a friend? I asked, now genuinely wishing to know who that son of a gun was. He came, fought the cursed spirit inside a domain no less, then the next second he showed his fangs at us. Whose side was he on? My question seemed to have jolted those professional jujutsu sorcerers out of their daze. That's not possible, he died back then, Mahito muttered to himself. Until now he felt like he was watching a ghost, unable to believe whether it was real or an illusion. However, no mere illusion could kill a special grade curse spirit. You know him, old man, Maki snapped, demanding answers. Who was he? As I said, a man who shouldn't exist, a ghost. Mahito shook his head. Clearly, the scene had put even a veteran sorcerer like him on edge. Forget about that man for now. Fushiguro won't last long against him. We have to help Fushiguro. Nanami tightened his grip around his weapon and said, So his name is Fushiguro, huh? Must be his surname. Well, something better than nothing, I guess. I filed that away as usual. Forget it. We can't win against that man. I know what he is capable of doing, Mahito replied, this time truly serious, shaking his head. I'm not letting Fushiguro face that man alone. As an adult presiding over this mission, it's my duty to make certain none of my colleagues come to harm. Nanami said with resolve and moved to go after wherever that man took the black-haired boy. Did I just watched all of this unfold, only wondering, why the hell do both that man and the kid look so similar? As for who was going where, I had no interest in that. I knew where I was going, out of Shibuya and if possible out of this damn country. What about you? Maki asked, looking at me. She too wasn't planning on letting Nanami go after Fushiguro alone. Me, yeah, what are you going to do? If you're not planning on fighting, then get out of Shibuya as soon as possible. It's dangerous out here, though I don't think I have to tell you that now, do I? Maki snorted, clearly a bit bitter at me for something. Or perhaps that was just her general attitude toward everyone. Dagon, you're gone as well. The walking trio and I froze at the sudden shift in the air. A chill ran down my spine at that voice and that pressure. Nanami, Mahito, and Maki almost immediately snapped to look at another cursed spirit. By pressure alone, he felt equal to, if not more dangerous than, that octopus curse from earlier. Are you serious right now? Another special grade? Maki clicked her tongue, her knuckles going white as she tightened her grip around her weapon. Neither Mahito nor Nanami said anything, but their faces said enough. We were all fucked. The cursed spirit looked like a volcano. Literally, he had a volcano for a head with a single huge eye. I had no evidence, but my instincts told me that this was much worse than the one from earlier. And then, as if I was seeing things, I could feel it, real anger, within that cursed spirit's single eye as he looked over all of us. Before my hands were even halfway formed into the domain sign, the cursed spirit was next to Nanami as if he had teleported. And then, as if made out of coal, I saw the man explode into flames. His entire upper frame became a living candle. My breath hitched at that. My hands could no longer find the strength to form the hand signs, even though they were only centimeters apart. Next came the heat, the scorched scent of burned flesh, and the fiery nature of the cursed spirit bloomed a kind of panic inside me, which froze me on the spot. Experience spoke this time. Mahito reacted in time, his own speed matching that of the volcano curse, and he vanished the next second, appearing near the curse to freeze it in his frame. However, the cursed spirit seemed to anticipate that. Just as Mahito was about to touch him, an explosion caught him off guard. The volcano curse seemingly sprouted mini-volcanoes on the ceiling, raining down molten magma and fire on top of the supreme Grade 1 sorcerer. A pillar of fire descended upon Mahito and burned the man completely into a crisp. If the old man really survived that, then my respect for him would reach divine levels. And just as I was ready to expect a similar fate, I felt my entire body shaking. It wasn't fear, instead it was the girl beside me. Maki had grabbed me by the collar and shaken me out of my stupor. What the hell are you dozing off for? If you don't want to die, then do your thing, you idiot. Maki shouted, so hard it almost gave me a migraine. However, it did what it was intended to do. It jolted me out of my stupor. Survival instinct kicked in just in time. Just before the volcano cursed spirit turned his attention toward us, my still hovering hands finally joined. Domain expansion. Death trade. Thanks to my recent refinement to my domain, the execution time was shortened by half. The one giant eye of the fire volcano curse enlarged to epic proportions. Perhaps of all things, he wasn't expecting a domain from anyone outside Gojo Satoru in Shibuya. He backed off almost instantly, his hands already trying to form his own domain. But he was late. My domain's increased speed made sure that it hit him first. My domain encapsulated us. Me, Maki, and the curse. The sure hit effect landed just right, but, don't use your curse technique and in return I shall. I paused. In return for that, what could I do? Stop fighting. But even without his curse technique active, Maki couldn't take him alone if I removed myself from the fight. Remove my technique too? But that would collapse my domain. Death trade, a domain-based technique which could force a trade inside its sure hit effect, provided the trade was equal in value. Earlier, I had time to think of a trade, something which could give me or my side an advantage. But here, in a domain deployed out of sheer panic, nothing came to mind that could work. I thought of a few trades, even knowing they weren't equal in status, and tried to activate them, but they never worked, and that delay was enough for the volcano cursed spirit to deploy his own domain. Domain expansion, Coffin of the Iron Mountain. My already established domain shook violently, breaking apart from one side as a fiery domain made of lava and molten magma erupted from the curse's side. He violently pushed my domain back until they were at a stalemate in the middle, a domain clash. Again? I gritted my teeth in irritation. I was once again in that situation where both of our domains were equally refined. Irritation rang inside me. For a second, I cursed my own idiocy for not coming up with something of equal value to trade at that moment. I have to say, I wasn't expecting a sorcerer of this caliber besides Satoru Gojo here in Shibuya. Guess you Jujutsu sorcerers are not entirely out of options just yet besides Gojo. No wonder Dagon died. You were responsible for it, weren't you? However, make no mistake, you'll die here. You're no Gojo Satoru. The curse said. Anger and a gleam both shone in that single big eye before he rushed toward us inside the clash of domains. Maki! I shouted, barely calculating who the volcano curse was targeting first. And unlike what I anticipated, it was not me, the one holding up the domain, but her. As soon as the volcano curse spirit released his domain hand signs, my domain slightly gained the upper hand just because I was still actively maintaining it. However, that slight shift was useless if he killed me first. Involuntarily, I too had to let go of the hand signs and defend against the incoming attack. The volcano curse's hand lit up with fire, and the next second he unleashed what felt like a flamethrower from his hands toward us. Maki gritted her teeth. She was completely outmatched at this level of battle. She knew she had to protect me or the domain would collapse and both of us would die. Without thinking twice, she put herself in front of me, ready to face the fire alone, to burn if that was what was destined for her. And just as the fire reached her, just as she braced herself to be scarred for life or give up on it entirely, something shifted around her. The fiery heat suddenly vanished. Because it met a wall made out of pure water. What? The volcano curse stopped in pure disbelief. I slowly removed my hand from the ground, and as soon as I did, the water wall disappeared. Maki snapped her head toward me like she had seen a ghost. You! What? How did you do that? I just gave her a knowing smile. Just a trade. Nothing much. Chapter 10. Clash in Domain Death Trade. A technique where the user can force a trade of any kind inside their domain, as long as the trade values are similar. However, that didn't give it its unique name. Not at all. If anything, being able to put a trade was the secondary function of the technique, since a primary trade came pre-imposed on both the user and the enemy. The trade of death. This particular trade only takes place when someone dies inside the domain. It doesn't matter who kills whom. Upon the death, the other shall get it all. Power, potential, whether it be cursed energy or the technique itself, the winner gets it all, and thus the technique is appropriately named, Death Trade. The volcano curse, who I just recently recalled in those fragmented memories, was called Jogo. He stared at me like I had poked him in his eye for fun's sake after I somehow summoned water out of nowhere. Maki wasn't that different. She wouldn't call her knowledge of jujutsu diverse by any means, but even she knew that most techniques are linear in nature. The boy's technique, as she saw in the domain, was about trading if she wasn't mistaken. Then why could he use water? Little did either of them know that I could, because I had Dagon's power. His cursed energy. His technique. Even his memories if I wished to access them. This was the toll of the death trade. The winner gets it all. If I had lost, then everything that makes me me would have been Dagon's, or any last person standing inside my domain. Stop gawking and help me out, will you? I snapped Maki out of her stupor. The special grade cursed energy I got from Dagon erupted around me, buffing my stats. That CE shockwave was enough to make Maki concentrate, and both of us rushed at Jogo. He too put aside the sudden water attack and dived headfirst to fight us. Water surged around me in violent currents, crashing against the burning landscape of Jogo's domain and the inky black of my own. Steam exploded into the air when it came in contact with the volcano curse's heat. Controlling water was harder than I previously thought, mostly because Dagon himself never relied too much on water. His ace was always those Shikigami, and I can't use those Shikigami without the sure hit effect of the domain though. Stay close. I shouted to Maki, and honestly there was no need for it, seeing as the girl didn't answer back. She was already moving like my shadow. Jogo appeared in front of us without warning. A blast of fire erupted from his palm, a concentrated inferno meant to erase us instantly. I reacted on instinct. Water surged forward, colliding with the flames. The impact detonated into a violent burst of steam, but the force behind it still drove me backward. My feet dragged across part of my domain. Too strong, this guy a special grade? How come there is such a gap between Dagon and him? This volcano head felt like on another level. My body tensed up. If that was his usual level at which he operated, then this fight would not be easy. Maki slipped through the steam while I was shaken, swinging her naginata in a brutal arc toward Jogo's head. He caught it, rather easily at that. You're an outclassed woman. Give up. Jogo could hardly feel any cursed energy inside her, and the lack of cursed energy or any showing of a cursed technique so far meant dead weight in his eyes. Maki gritted her teeth. The damn comment got to her pride. Not until I pluck out that eyeball of yours. Pathetic, Jogo muttered. A surge of flames exploded outward from his body. I yanked the water back around Maki just in time. The fire crashed against it, boiling it violently. The shield held, but barely. I could feel the cursed energy draining rapidly as I tried to maintain both the domain and the defense. Maki clicked her tongue and disengaged, flipping back toward me. He's too fast, she said, almost growling. I can see that. My brow twitched. Way to state the obvious. Jogo didn't give us time to breathe, though. He vanished, and reappeared above us. A meteor of fire formed in his palms and then came crashing down on both of us. I threw everything I had upward. Kamehameha. A massive surge of water collided with it midair. For a moment the two forces clashed, fire screaming against water, neither giving way. Then it broke. The explosion sent both of us flying. I hit the ground hard, my vision spinning. The domain flickered for a second. I almost slipped from my mind that if I were to take too much damage, the domain would collapse. What was that? Maki looked at me, bewildered. I don't know, okay? I'm going by my instincts here. I complained. Why was she pointing out something I did mid-fight? I didn't know why I did it. It was instinct. I don't even know what those words mean. It was as if muscle memory kicked in there. Maki snorted. More like an 8th grader's instincts, she grumbled under her breath, and then her eyes were back on Jogo. The volcano curse was charging up, a big one. I forced myself up, dragging water around us again as Jogo let go of a powerful stream of fire at us. Neither of us needed an indicator to know that this was something we might want to dodge. We threw ourselves to opposite sides as the beam of fire raged past us by hair's length. Burns. It burned so hard. Even when the attack never touched us, my skin felt like it was melting. I quickly released water around both Maki and me to cool us down. We'll die like this. Maki grabbed me by the collar and pushed both of us out of another fireball coming our way. Both of us collapsed on the floor, barely missing the fireball, Maki's entire body pressing against me to keep me down by force. Yeah, I noticed that. I replied. Even if she picked up on the sarcasm in my tone, which I clearly wished her to do, she didn't comment on it. Good, then think of something, she shot back. I blinked. I think, who's the Jujutsu sorcerer here? I got nothing. Don't you have something? Something like a powerful technique or a hidden trump card? Anything? I asked, part desperation, part hope, and a whole lot of me being awed at the audacity of this girl to ask a civilian what to do in a situation like this. Aren't they supposed to be the professionals? Man, I'm missing Nanami already. Maki's body stiffened just for a second before she huffed. I got nothing like that. If I had, then that volcano head would have already been missing his eyeball by now, she retorted. What can I say? We are doomed. Well, not exactly. There was a way that it wouldn't take a genius to know that we weren't winning. Hell, we were barely surviving. And survive we must, at least until the domain clash is over. Just stall for time for now. Wait until the domain clash is over, he replied, and once again we were on the move. Chapter 11, Pure Chaos. Crack. The domain clash finally ended after a painful minute or so of brutal survival. Both domains shattered at once and the pressure vanished, and then came the impact that I didn't even realize I was flying until my back slammed into the ground outside the domain's boundary. Beside me fell Maki, though a tad bit more gracefully. The girl had at least landed on her feet, but I felt like I broke almost every fiber inside me against that monster. Why the hell is a special grade so powerful? Everything hurt. Burns stung across my arms and side, my clothes half charred and sticking to my skin. My breathing was uneven, each inhale dragging heat into my chest. It felt like the entire respiratory tract inside me had been burned to a char. You cough, okay? I asked Maki, and to my slight jealousy, she was indeed looking much better than I. Her body was more durable than I had anticipated, but we were alive, and for that I was glad. Yeah, so what's your plan? Now that we are out, tell me. Maki nodded and asked, eyes still on Jogo, who too had gotten out, but unlike us who were punched out by him, he calmly stood there like he owned the place that he was mostly unharmed. Even the minor damage Maki and I delivered healed up in a matter of seconds. Didn't even know cursed spirits had super healing that I forced myself to stand, legs shaking slightly, but I poured more CE to reinforce myself. Between the fighting, I had figured out how to do that with much more efficiency that I observed him for a few seconds before answering Maki. Cooldown. What? She asked, confused. After a domain use, a sorcerer's technique goes on cooldown. Could be seconds, could be minutes. During this time, we can't use our cursed technique. I assume it's similar for cursed spirits as well, that I can't use my domain for a while, and he most likely can't use his fire-based technique either. This is our chance. We have to take him out before he recovers his technique, I explained. Maki blinked. Looked at me, then at the cursed spirit, then back at me. I understand. She nodded. Maki didn't know that something like this exists. Honestly, how many did she know in Jujutsu High or in the Zenin clan who had a domain, let alone someone who would explain this to her? Only one, and that idiot had himself sealed by this lot. Maki's earlier scowl turned into a feral grin. That fire was a pain in her ass until now. If not for my water technique, both of us would have been done for by now. If that fire technique was out of the equation, then we can jump him, she muttered. I nodded. Together, we moved at the same time. She rushed him head-on, Naginata already mid-swing. I followed a step behind, CE reinforcement tightening around me. I was getting better at this cursed energy business during the fight, but when it came to fighting itself, I sucked. I could only amateurishly throw punches and kicks with reinforcement. That was the limit of my current offensive capabilities. Jogo moved at the exact same time we did, almost twice as fast as us, covering more distance than we could, launching himself toward us. Maki's strike came down with enough force to crush bone. Human bones, mind you. Not spirit bones. Definitely not special grade bones. Jogo raised his arm and blocked it. The impact cracked the ground beneath them. It was almost terrifying how physically gifted the girl was. I was almost envious, but still, Jogo's stance didn't break. I came in from the side. My punch landed against his ribs. It felt like hitting solid rock. However, the impact wasn't fruitless. Jogo was pushed 2 steps back by it. Jogo turned his head slightly, his eye locking onto me. That big eye honed onto me like a predator finally spotting its target. His logic was on point. The woman had almost no cursed energy. The real threat in this fight was the man. But the woman was annoying. Kill her first and remove the annoyance. Kill the man who killed Dagon next and the match ends anyway. Both options worked for him, however, that all sounded good in theory. In practice, he found it particularly annoying how hard we were turning out to be to kill. His hand shot out and grabbed my face. Pain exploded as he slammed me into the ground. Spiderweb cracks formed where I hit, my vision blacking out for a few blinks from the impact. That if not for my improved reinforcement, my head would have been crushed completely. Before he could follow up, Maki struck again, this time aiming for his neck. Jogo twisted, releasing me just in time to catch the weapon again. His other hand drove forward, slamming into Maki's stomach and sending her skidding back. That he really didn't need his technique to beat the shit out of us. My eyes locked onto Maki's Naginata in Jogo's hand, and my body moved on instinct. Cursed energy surged up, and I swung a kick, which the cursed Spyrai. Now I understood, even without flames, his strength, speed, and durability were overwhelming. But what the F***ck, his head was so damn sturdy. The stars I saw a few seconds prior came rushing back, filling my vision. That it was only a testament to how hard I delivered that head, but that even Jogo was clutching his head, forced to let go of the Naginata and step back 3 steps. You annoying damn human, he growled. A fist was already coming my way. I happened to have a weapon in hand, so I used the only thing I had as a shield. With a sickening crack, the wooden handle of the Naginata snapped into 2. The punch continued and hit me with reduced force, but still enough to throw me 5 steps back. Just as another attack was reaching for me, it was suddenly intercepted by Maki, who appeared out of nowhere. Give me that, she shouted without looking, and I knew what she wanted. I just threw her the broken weapon. Once this is over, you're paying for this. Seriously, she cared about that in the middle of something like this? I honestly felt there was something wrong with this girl's brain. Or were all jujutsu sorcerers like her? Quit lying around and help me, Maki grunted, fighting off Jogo's relentless assaults with her broken weapon. Had to say, even with a broken weapon, she used it like a master. How old is she to master weapons like this? I got up, struggling with acute pain in my chest, but forced my body anyway and rushed at Jogo again that we adjusted mid-battle. No plans, no words, just pure instinct to survive. Maki moved first and I followed. Just like earlier, though followed might have been misleading, I was moving, yes, but it was she who moved me. Literally dragged me to match her speed. Jogo stepped in again, aiming straight for me. I barely raised my guard with reinforcement snapping into place before Maki intercepted, slipping into his range and deflecting the strike with her forearm. Don't think, move, she snapped. I did. At least I tried. Jogo's next hit would have taken my head off, but Maki grabbed the back of my collar and yanked me out of the way like I weighed nothing. I said, move, don't think. How am I supposed to do that? She shoved me forward immediately after I stumbled, and my fist crashed into Jogo's side. The girl was using me like a humanoid weapon. It worked though, and that's why I wasn't complaining. Cursed energy surged through the impact, forcing him a step back. I pursed my lips, the damage was there, but he healed almost instantly. This won't do. Not even a moment later, Maki yanked me back again. I saw her face only inches away from me, as our body almost connected before she used the turning and earlier pull as a leverage and shot her own body forwards. I barely retained my balance while she engaged Jogo once more, drawing his attention, controlling the space while I covered for attacks she couldn't handle. Until she threw me in once more. Did I get it? I was the only one doing damage between the two of us. But if it was just me, I would never land a hit. She was creating openings for me. I respected that, but which man would be happy being manhandled like a toddler? But since Maki took the battlefield command, we were doing much better. Can't argue with that. Every time Jogo shifted his focus to me, she was already there, striking, redirecting, forcing his movements just enough to create an opening. I never hesitated to attack. I just couldn't figure out when she wanted me to attack. Which was the correct opening? How was I supposed to know that? I wasn't a fighter like her. It was chaos, but that's why we were surviving. If I didn't know when I was attacking, then how the hell was that volcano freak supposed to figure it out? A full-on throw sent me flying straight at Jogo with just enough alignment to land a hit. And I learned as well, timely covering for her when she couldn't handle constant exposure to Jogo's strikes. And midway, when I was moving to attack again, Jogo seemed to intentionally take the hit from me, catching me off guard. He grabbed me and, much like Maki, yanked me away, his hand going straight toward Maki's broken weapon. He caught the broken shaft of her naginata. Before she could react, he snapped off the jagged blade still attached to it. My stomach dropped. When he kicked her away and turned toward me, weapon in hand, without his technique, that weapon was the next best thing he had to kill. I was mid-step. Off balance. Completely open, the broken blade drove forward, aimed straight for my abdomen. Instincts kicked in and I forced my reinforcement as high as I could, but that wouldn't be enough to tank a naginata blade aimed at my abdomen. Just when I started to see the light, a hand forcefully grabbed my shoulder and violently yanked me sideways. The blade missed me by mere inches, and sank deep into Maki instead, right into her abdomen. My eyes widened in horror. Maki. Chapter 12, A Heated Clash 1. Maki. My eyes widened watching a 7-inch long blade insert into the girl's abdomen so cleanly that even blood didn't have space to leak. I had no idea how severe the wound was, but the scene alone brought a wave of despair onto me, which at first made me question whether struggling here was even worth it. Would it be just easier to let the curse do as he pleased? I have died once, what once more? But that thought was instantly vaporized seeing Maki's pained face, a line of blood leaking down from her mouth. Next came anger at the ridiculous situation I found myself in, anger at myself for being so weak, and anger at the cursed spirits who just can't give me any break. For God's sake, I just came here, got dragged into Gojo's domain, got my mind shattered, and ever since, I was just trying to survive. Just give me a damn break already. Eyes bloodshot. I poured more cursed energy into my fist and punched with all my power, with nothing but getting even with the volcano bastard on my mind. Of course, Jogo saw the attack coming. He was ready for it, but just as he was about to move, a familiar feeling came over him. Like a lightning bolt crashing down on him, his one big eye widened on its own, moving toward where he sensed the incoming dread. Sukuna. Someone was messing with Itadori Yuji, or else there was no way Sukuna's cursed energy would awaken so suddenly. He had to go now. He had the rest of Sukuna's fingers on him. Unfortunately for Jogo, that momentary lapse of concentration was enough for me to drive my fist right at his skull with everything I had. A shockwave tore through the station, followed by a bolt of black lightning, which I was quite familiar with. Black lightning erupted out of my fist, distorting the very space, and the next second I felt a jolt of clarity inside. I gave everything in that punch of mine, poured all my accumulated anger, frustration, grievances, and of course cursed energy, which was much higher now, mind you. The result was Jogo getting launched at the wall of the station lobby, blasting into it, breaking the wall outright, and still going strong until his airborne body collided with another building outside the station. Before I knew it, I was already moving toward the damn cursed spirit, my eyes wandering toward Maki just for a second, before snapping back at Jogo. The best way to help her is to take the special grade spirit away from here. The newfound clarity in my mind spoke, and my body obeyed. I sprinted at my best speed toward Jogo, who felt his world spinning there. For a second I was halfway, ready to deliver a flying kick onto the curse, but he moved first, moving out of the place just in time and rotating his body to land a haymaker punch at me. My instincts after that black flash were on point, just like back when I fought those hundreds of curses. I moved just in time, shifting my body midair and catching his hand, using my velocity and weight to throw him away. Both of us stood up just in time and were already rushing at each other. My fist shot toward his face, he tilted his head slightly too easily, and my punch grazed past him. His counter came instantly, a straight strike aimed at my throat. I barely brought my arm up in time. Getting him by chance was one time, but the bastard was still better than me in almost everything. The only thing keeping me in the fight was the boost from Black Flash. The impact still numbed my hand, though. He was both stronger and faster, and if the technique cooldown ended, then a lot more destructive, meaning I have to end this fight fast. I stepped in again, closing the gap before he could reset. A low kick aimed at his knee. Seeing Maki doing it like this earlier, he blocked it with his shin, and pain shot up my leg immediately. Idiot, no copying Maki. His elbow came down toward my spine. I twisted, barely avoiding it, and drove my shoulder into his chest instead. The hit forced him half a step back. My breathing was a mess. Apparently, there was an entire method to breathing during a fight. Has to be because mine was all over the place. Seeing his momentary lapse in balance, I sent dozens punches his way, most thrown at random, only focused on making them fast, while only a few had real intent to hurt behind them. Jogo weaved through them, his movements precise and minimal. Every dodge felt like he was measuring me. Did I genuinely wish to know how? Isn't having one big eye worse than two? How is he measuring the depth of the attacks? His own fist slipped through my guard and slammed into my ribs out of nowhere. I could have sworn I heard something crack. I staggered, but didn't fall, just raw force pushed me through it all, because if I fell now I was done for. Not just me but even Maki. I grabbed his arm before he could pull back and dragged him forward, throwing my head into his face. Don't get cocky. The impact rang through my skull. I didn't have to guess this time. I was certain it was cracked. My vision split into 2, then 4, and then 8. Haze clouded my eyes as the pain from the headbutt I just performed shot through me. Okay, no imitating anime protagonists either. They might have nothing in their brains, but mine is full with my fragile ego. But it seemed to have worked. He recoiled back hastily. I followed immediately, driving a punch straight into his chest. I couldn't even focus on him properly. However, my instincts and recently found sense of cursed energy were telling me exactly where he was, so I just focused on that, followed my gut feeling, and punched. Cursed energy surged once again. I felt my fist connecting in time, and then for a split second everything aligned again. Black lightning tore open the space once more, erupting a shockwave which almost cleared my haze. The world distorted as the impact landed. Jogo's body folded before being blasted backwards once again, this time much faster, tearing through the ground as he was sent flying across the street, carving a path of destruction through concrete and debris. Follow, follow, follow him, don't let go. My mind resonated with only this mantra, hammering the point into every breath I fought for. Every step burned, my body screamed at me to stop, but I pushed harder, already chasing him before he could recover. The second black flash had cleared my mind enough to at least think straight. Jogo, on the other hand, felt like his mind was hammered by someone. His single eye looked bruised, and the volcano on his head emitted smoke of utter confusion at his current state. And just as I was on him again, ready to start another round of violence, my mind snapped. Not the bad kind, but the kind which reminded me that it had recovered. No, it had recovered even before that. I just couldn't think in my anger that it was my technique. Black Flash had recovered my technique that I didn't even have to think before my body was already moving. Gathering all the cursed energy into my hand, I pushed it down to the ground with force. The second it hit, the ground burst open, a crack formed along the side of the smoothly built Shibuya street, and water came out like a natural disaster. Jogo noticed it, of course, but that didn't prepare him for the next tsunami which erupted from beneath my feet. A wave of 6-meter-tall water came crashing toward him and slammed into him with so much power that he couldn't even move in time. Chapter 13. A heated clash. Water roared into existence behind me, vast and violent, swelling into a towering mass that blotted out everything in its path. A tsunami born from raw cursed energy and instinct crashed forward with unstoppable force. The wave swallowed him whole. Even if he had reacted in time without his curse technique, he couldn't have done anything in front of such a large-scale attack. Concrete shattered. Cars twisted and were dragged like toys. The streets of Shibuya vanished beneath the surge as everything was ripped away and carried forward. Now I realized why this level of curses are called disasters. They can indeed cause casualties and property damage like natural disasters in life. And this was just water. I didn't even wish to see what something like an outer space disaster would look like. The thought of a meteor shower rushing towards Earth would terrify even someone like Satoru Gojo. Sure, nothing can touch the guy, but what about his friends, his family, or the best barber shop he gets his haircut at? Shaking my head out of the possible disastrous nature of this world, I focused back on the cursed spirit I just sent flooding to IRAN. It was of course a good thing volcano head was moving away from the station, but I can't let him out of my line of sight. Riding. Jogo looked pissed. The water began to settle in the distance, collapsing into chaos and ruin. I was already running towards him. Can't let him get his balance back. As long as I reach him, I know I can get through this. So I bolted, launching myself at him with everything I had. Before Jogo could even remove a bowl's worth of water on top of his volcano head, he saw a shadow falling on top of him. Jogo moved faster than he had ever moved in his life, and the next second the entire area was cracked open by my landing. I was pushing my cursed energy output as far as possible. Those black flashes have indeed helped me in fights. Curse you, Jogo gritted his teeth. But unlike what he expected, I didn't rush at him immediately after I landed and destroyed the street. No. I formed a familiar hand sign which made his eyes widen when he recognized what I was doing. Domain expansion. Death. Before I could even complete it, his fist crashed into my side, taking away my breath. The volcano moved so fast that I couldn't even track his movements. You annoying human. Why can't you just die? Jogo growled, swinging a haymaker fist at me. I barely caught that and swept my leg at his, going for his knee, but he jumped and gutted me right at the abdomen with his knee. My balance crumbled at that sudden blow, and I was sent skidding across wet concrete, breath knocked from my lungs. He didn't let go though. Just like me, he was also already after me. He was on me instantly, striking again and again, forcing me to defend instead of focus. I barely defended myself from his fury-infused punches and jabs, hardly had time to free my hands. I knew that he knew that if he gave me any leeway, it was over for him. His technique was still on cooldown while I could open my domain. Every time I tried to create even a moment of stillness, he shattered it, mainly trying not to let me join my hands. For God's sake, why do I need both hands to use my domain? Why couldn't it be just a one-hand sign domain? I blocked a strike, countered with a punch to his jaw, but he barely reacted. His knee drove into my stomach, once again folding me over in pain. Okay, that definitely felt personal. All air was knocked out of me with that one hit.no space. No time. The bastard was not leaving any gap for me to exploit. I gritted my teeth and forced myself forward again. Fine. I'll make the opening myself. I lunged at him with determination clear in my eyes. It's been already a few minutes since our last domain clash. His technique would recover any minute now. I have to hurry. A straight punch, he parried, another punch immediately after that, but he dodged this one. And that was when I found it, the gap. This was what Maki was talking about. I stepped in closer. The earlier dodge leaving the volcano head in a strange position, I exploited it. Pouring cursed energy into my legs, I once again went for a knee blow. Jogo staggered as his knee gave out just in time. This was my time. Domain X. Before I knew it, Jogo pulled a one-hand stand and with his non-injured leg aimed right at my jaw to spin my entire vision around. Son of a... Anger once again filled me. I was so close to ending this match and this guy wouldn't let me. Irritated, I let go of the damn domain *F***ck that, and let the hostile instinct take over. A fist was aimed right at Jogo's smug face as soon as he came back up on his legs. For a second I felt my fist vibrate on contact, and then for the fourth time since I woke up in this world, the sparks of black blessed me. Space distorted open, thunderous black lightning sparkled, burning the surroundings and painting everything with black. Jogo's face distorted, and he was launched yet once again toward a building, creating a crater in the wall and getting lost somewhere in some poor bastard's kitchen. Pain exploded across my body. As much as those black flashes were clearing my mind, they were also making me realize just how much I have overexerted my body. End this. I'm ending this now. Domain expansion. Death. Before I knew it, my head snapped backwards, my balance gone and blood exploded out of my head. My astonished eyes widened and captured why I was falling back instead of opening my domain. A frying pan. Hanging just above my head. A frying pan which just flew out of that. I couldn't even complete the thought before more kitchen appliances came flying at me, out of that hole made in the building. This bastard, he wouldn't let me open my domain no matter what. Before I fell, I supported my upper body with my hands and with all my strength tossed myself back to my feet. As soon as they touched the ground, I was running towards the damn kitchen. I'll cook that volcano today. Jogo seemed to have the same thought. He emerged out of the building almost at the same time, rushing at me. I was a tad bit faster. My fist was already on top of the cursed spirit's face, with everything I had left, which wasn't much, honestly. My body was running on fumes by now. Jogo's head snapped to the side as the impact jolted his head. His posture broke with that attack. However, instead of throwing a punch or backing away, he did something I didn't expect. He caught my fist from retreating. For a second, my inexperience made me ponder why, but the answer came not that long after, when his other hand was near his chest, open palm blazing with fiery cursed energy. Time came to a standstill there. It felt like that heartbeat of time was stretched to all eternity. The human brain works quite fast, actually, especially a sorcerer's brain. It didn't take me a PhD in fighting for me to realize what happened. The bastard baited me with that earlier attack. He took it intentionally. Motherf. And then there was agony. A particular agony of being burned alive by heat so strong that even your bones wouldn't be left behind by the time it was over. I could feel my flesh melting, clothes evaporating. I didn't wish to give the cursed spirit that satisfaction, but an utter growl of pain and an anguished cry let out of my very being that I couldn't suppress in time. Salute to both Nanami and Mahito for taking it like a man. It didn't take long, for a cursed spirit of Jogo's caliber it often didn't even take a blink of an eye to end a human's life. The human only survived because his technique was burned out. But his irritation and anger towards this human were so great that he made sure he enjoyed that scream of pain for as long as it lasted. And then it was over. When fire, light, and heat were gone, only a charred shell was left behind. Barely standing, ready to crumble any second, he let go of the corpse's hand, letting it meet the dust and be one with it. It fell, slowly, steadily, until it stopped halfway. Jogo's one big eye snapped open when he felt the human's hand grab his own in one tight grip to break eight. Impossible! But the corpse, no, the human wasn't letting him move an inch. Jogo couldn't help but only stand there and see the human's charred fist rush like a meteor towards his own face. And just as it arrived, for the fifth time in this day, a phenomenon called Black Flash graced them. Jogo was launched like a bullet towards a building and got plastered there. Darkness covered his vision for a while. His mind lost all motivation to do anything outside of contemplating why the hell he was even there to begin with. What's the point of living? Until he snapped out of his daze by the bulging pile of hot blood pooling in his throat. He spat out a mouthful of cursed spirit blood and gaped at his own trembling frame. Anger, irritation, helplessness, and all sorts of feelings overcame him. Why won't this human die? He wanted to shout to the high heavens. Complain, if possible, to the Creator that he gathered all his strength and got himself out of his crater, which was his third crater of the day. With fire in his eyes, he was ready to bring down a real-life meteor to show the human imbecile what a crater looks like, but upon seeing him, all the fire ran out of him. The completely charred human was on his knees, like dead but refusing to fall down. Jogo could only stare at the charred figure who didn't move, didn't breathe, didn't say anything for a few seconds before sighing. I have to find Sukuna. With that said, he turned around 3 steps. That was all he took, just 3 steps. Before he heard these dreaded words. Domain expansion. Chapter 14. A heated clash. 3. Jogo found himself teleported somewhere else entirely. Gone was the dark night sky of Shinjuku, the streets, neon lights, and civilization altogether. Everything was gone. Jogo stood upon soft sand. The sun's golden rays fell onto him softly, gracefully, perhaps a bit harshly as the tropical heat washed over him, but for a cursed spirit created out of humankind's fear of earth and volcanoes, he didn't even feel the slight difference. For a moment he did not move. The battlefield, ruin, water, destruction was gone. Replaced by something he knew. Something carved deep into his memory. A tropical island he remembered from before, when all of his companions were together. The air was calm. The sky stretched endlessly above, bright and clear. Palm trees swayed gently and the distant horizon shimmered, except, his eyes shifted, the ocean was gone. Where there should have been endless water, there was only emptiness. A hollow stretch of space, as if the world itself had forgotten to finish forming. Everything else was perfect, every detail intact, but the absence was wrong. Jogo's gaze narrowed. He knew this place. Dagon. The name came out low. It was his domain. Jogo, for what it was worth, couldn't figure out what was happening. Wasn't he supposed to be inside that human's domain? Why was he here? Could it be that the human didn't even copy Dagon's technique but also his domain? No. Not possible. Domains are personalized to a person. The sure-hit effect could change, but not the theme, not the domain itself. So. Where was he? He asked himself, confused and a bit hopeful. His one big eye roamed around, taking the familiar place in until he finally found something which forced his eye to widen. Where the ocean should have been, something was floating there. The figure was so familiar that Jogo didn't even need confirmation of who he was. Dagon. Hovering in empty space, exactly as he had been, form, presence, cursed energy, all identical. Not weakened, not distorted, and very much alive. Jogo for a few seconds just stood there, trying to convince himself that this was a dream, an illusion, but it couldn't be. The cursed energy was exactly like Dagon's. Unfortunately, the domain didn't wait for his decision. Without warning, the sure-hit effect activated. Aquatic Shikigami erupted into existence, surging forward in an overwhelming tide. Creatures of teeth and fins and monstrous forms, all converging on a single point. Jogo couldn't even react before the sure-hit effect of the domain had him completely covered with all sorts of aquatic Shikigami. Claws tore into him. Jaws clamped down. Bodies collided with crushing force. The sheer volume of attacks drowned out everything else. His body was ripped apart piece by piece. Chunks torn away. Flesh shredded. Limbs forced back under the relentless assault. It was the damage which finally jolted him out of his reverie. His mind snapped back into place, cursed energy surged around him immediately, coating him in a thick form of coating. It was domain amplification. The next wave of Shikigami struck, but couldn't get their teeth to sink into him before being repelled by Jogo's domain amplification. The very technique which earlier saved him from Satoru Gojo was now saving him from Dagon's domain. The sure-hit effect broke against the amplification, its guaranteed nature stripped away. The creatures still attacked, but no longer with inevitability. He tore through them, burning through their forms with raw physical force, crushing and ripping them apart as they came. Without the sure-hit effect, those creatures were nothing for him. However, there was still Dagon, still floating, watching him from further away. Dagon. Dagon. No response. Nothing at all, which made him finally believe that something was indeed wrong. Before he figured out what to do about the situation, without hesitation, Dagon's figure launched itself forward. Next second, Dagon was right on top of him, his fist connected to Jogo's hand, which he raised just in time to block. The impact sent a shock through his body. The power was real. This couldn't possibly be an illusion. Oi, Jogo growled. This isn't funny. Dagon completely ignored that. He continued to attack. Jogo countered, deflecting the blow and stepping back. He clashed again, trading blows with the figure. Every movement was familiar, every angle, every surge of cursed energy. To the minute detail, everything was like Dagon. However, Jogo's gut feeling told him that this wasn't Dagon. He can't be it was identical. Yes, but not Dagon. I see. Is this that human's sure-hit effect? Is that how he killed Dagon? He forced Dagon to fight one of us. Jogo's expression darkened. What insolence! Jogo's temperature rose, the volcano on top of his head boiled, leaking gases. And his one big eye narrowed into a dangerous half-moon shape. Dagon pressed forward without pause, each strike carrying the same weight as before, the same destructive force. Jogo blocked, countered, moved, but his options were limited. While domain amplification still covered him, he couldn't use his technique. As long as it was active, his own technique had to be dormant. That was the trade-off regarding this particular technique. If he dropped it though, then the sure hit effect of Dagon's domain would shred him in seconds. Jo. Be it then. Jogo's eyes one last time flickered towards the still attacking form of his old friend, even after knowing that the one he remembered had already passed on and would maybe be reborn someday in the far future. That this one wasn't his friend but just an imitation, he couldn't help but feel anger towards the person who would do this. Next second, his cursed energy surged outward. Domain expansion, Coffin of the Iron Mountain. His own domain erupted out, flames came into existence, carving into the tropical landscape, tearing through the false paradise. Once again a domain clash was taking place. The sure hit effects collided and then both sides' domain sure hit effects got neutralized. Surprisingly enough, both domains' refinement was mostly on par with each other. However, even without the sure hit effect of Dagon's domain, he didn't stop. If anything, he sped up. Even as the domains clashed, it continued forward, attacking without thought. Jogo met the imitation of his old friend head-on, blows turned explosive. Each strike carried heat, each movement trailing destruction. That was the most dangerous part about Jogo's technique. It was inherently destructive in nature. If it hadn't been on cooldown, that fight against that human wouldn't have lasted half that long. But the imitation did not falter, weaken, or slow down. It was going strong to the point Jogo once again was left to wonder whether the one he was fighting really was an imitation. Out of several blows they exchanged so far, the only minor difference he could figure out between Dagon's usual behavior and this one was watered. He wasn't using watered. In fact, the entire domain had no water whatsoever. That alone was an indication that this wasn't Dagon's domain. This wasn't Dagon. The fight went on for a while, even after Jogo finally determined to erase this cheap imitation. It wasn't like he could with a snap of his fingers. The power was real. Very real. He kept burning Dagon's image in front of him, while taking damage himself. He was better, plain and simple, but that doesn't mean he was winning. At this rate the fight could go on for a long while. He can't have that. He had to go find Sukuna's vessel. Enough. I'll end this phase in one move, he growled. Cursed energy gathered inside his body, and then he was airborne. The air grew heavy. The sky darkened. Above them something formed. It was a massive burning ball of death. A fireball the size of a small island, which would have destroyed the entire Shibuya if Jogo were to launch something of that scale on a city. And he was pulling that inside a domain clash. Maximum technique, maximum meteor. The meteor fell as if heaven's wrath had been brought down on earth. It was death in all sense, even for a special grade curse like Dagon. However, facing such danger, the water disaster didn't back down. Instead he rushed towards it, rushed at the massive meteor and rushed at Jogo who launched that thing. Dagon directly faced the attack, his body burning up, yet he refused to use water. His cursed energy rose higher and higher to meet the threat until nothing of him seemed to be left. And then came the collision. It tore through the sky, crushing the false domain beneath it. The impact was absolute, fire and force collapsing everything in its path. The impact was so devastating in fact that the domain clash finally broke. The two pieces of space separated from reality, vanished from their place of existence alongside all the evidence of those ridiculous feats of jujutsu pulled by Jogo for the volcano head. He was left there, panting hard, wounds slowly healing as his cursed energy started fixing him. His soul eye was still on the place where the charred remains of Dagon were. However, they were gone. They were an imitation after all, he sighed, exhausted and once again at his technique's cooldown. Jogo sighed tiredly, ready to just get out of there. Sukuna was still in his mind. Not so quick. But that was when a familiar voice once again sounded in his mind. Jogo's head snapped back faster than Sukuna's slashes. There he was, that human. Charred just like earlier, he looked worse now. But still living. Anger boiled inside Jogo for what he had to go through inside the domain. Just as he was about to rush at the insolent human and finally kill him, he said something which gave Jogo chills. Domain expansion? What? But how? His technique should be on cooldown. That's impossible, and as if the human understood his plight, he sent a cocky smirk at him before finally finishing. Death Trade. Chapter 15, Technique Revealed. The domain expanded, the area was once again shrouded in darkness, and a very familiar giant cross with weight plates hanging from its sides arose behind me. Jogo could only have time to turn around and catch sight of my domain already established before he was completely locked onto his place. His one big eyeball roamed all over the domain as if he was hallucinating. But how? How come you're not falling into technique burnout? Jogo honestly couldn't get it. To open the domain back-to-back 2 times was almost impossible. Domains put a huge impact on the brain, so much so that after opening the domain, the user has to wait for his technique to cool down before he or she can even attempt to use his technique, let alone open the domain once again. All the huge cursed energy expenses on opening one domain aside, even considering that the human had enough cursed energy, there is no way he should be able to perform domain expansion 2 times in a row. Jogo's trembling eyes were fixed on me, occasionally glancing back at the giant, ominous cross hanging behind me with dread building inside him. I wasn't in such a good condition either. Jogo's earlier attack had done a number on me. My entire upper body was charred. I couldn't even feel my own hands at this point. That's how bad my condition was. I was running on fumes, I knew it. Just push it a bit more and I'm as good as gone, and that's why I had to pull the last trick I had in my arsenal. I agree, I replied to the hostile feral curse spirit with a calm, almost too calm response. My voice barely came out, I could hardly hear myself, let alone him. But surprisingly, he did point one thing more to be grateful about in this accursed world, I suppose. Jogo, seeing my condition, once again tried to move, but my sure-hit effect of the domain had already made him immobile. He wasn't going anywhere. Irritation snarled onto him and he tried to use domain amplification to cut out the sure-hit effect of my domain. Next second, his one big eye was wide open enough for me to just pluck it out from its socket. Knowing his shock, I continued. I knew even if I were to open my domain after you recovered your technique, the outcome. It's understandable, Jogo still hadn't figured out the nature of my technique. I was fighting him all the while using Dagon's technique. What do you mean? Jogo asked, getting desperate at his helpless condition. His technique was on cooldown, he couldn't open his domain, he couldn't move, nor was he able to use amplification to shake off the sure-hit effect of the domain. Explaining my technique, huh? What a JJK thing to do. I genuinely felt a strange sense of irony in what I was about to do. Explaining my technique to an enemy, it would be idiocy in any other world, but here it was rewarded. While my memories of everything else were still at the back foot, I did figure out everything I had to know about this world thanks to all those black flashes earlier. I chuckled to myself, though I had to cease that action immediately when those motions felt like breaking my insides apart. I was already a living mess, I didn't wish to be a dead mess anytime soon. I was in the worst condition, and I apparently had expected it. Death was around the corner, but at this moment I was alive. Well, what the hell? I'll bite. My technique allows me to forcefully impose trades on anyone inside my domain. As you can feel it yourself, you can't move. That's a trade. I have restricted your movement by trading away my own movement. Both of us are no better than stones until the domain doesn't collapse. Jogo blinked, finally starting to figure out the nuance of my technique. He finally started to connect the dots. I continued. Usually, trades have to be equal in value for them to work. I can't ask you for your life in return for something less important, can I now? Back when my domain connected, before you clashed your own domain with mine, I had you in there. But couldn't figure out a suitable trade in my favor. Didn't have anything on me which could have given me a leg up. Jogo's brows furrowed. What about Dagon's technique? What about this domain? How did you do that? Seems like he wasn't interested in me boosting my technique by revealing it. Shame I wasn't stopping just because he wasn't interested in it, and it's not like I was talking because I needed that power boost. Though I certainly could use some in this condition. What do you think is the biggest trade someone can make with Volcano Head? I asked with a glee, his face visibly reddened in anger and heat upon me calling him that name, but he did give it a genuine thought before answering. Ideals, identity, or one's life. I nodded. Inside my domain, whoever loses the trade of death. He loses everything while the winner gets it all. Jogo's eyes widened. Dagon, you're smart. I smiled. Your cursed friend lost, and thus I had his technique, cursed energy, and anything else I desired from him. If earlier Jogo's face looked angry, then now he was livid. So his assumption was correct. The human had stolen Dagon's power. That still doesn't explain how you used his domain, or used your domain immediately afterwards. Jogo shouted, struggling his damnedest to move but couldn't. Sacrificial trade. I added. Sacrifice? Technically, I should retain his power for as long as I wish to, but in times like this I can sacrifice a power or technique which I acquired from someone else. This contains everything I took from them, and in return I can summon a mirage of them to fight for me. Someone who is treated just like the original, not as me or an extension of my technique. Jogo's eyes widened. That? The one fighting you inside that domain, it was indeed your friend. It has everything of your friend, besides his mind and soul, that I knew I can't beat you without putting you inside my domain. But you own a domain, and that amplification technique was a hindrance. If I had used my domain, the most likely outcome would have been the same as what happened before. A domain clash, leaving both of us burned out again. And I don't think I can survive that next clash. So I sacrificed the technique and power I got from Dagon, made him use his domain to consume yours, I replied calmly, but every word of mine made Jogo bust a vein. Steam rose from his head, but he surprisingly reined in his anger somehow. And what about my domain amplification? What the hell did you do? He asked with clear hostility. Ah, that annoying technique. I grimaced. If not for Jogo knowing both domain and domain amplification, this match wouldn't have lasted this long. As I said, generally every trade I make inside my domain requires me to trade away something of the same value to activate the trade. This was the exact reason I couldn't stop you last time. I wasn't fast enough to find the right trade. But guess what? Those black flashes really give a sorcerer a new perspective on Jujutsu. If someone had cleared the path for me, I realized how to solve that issue. Can you guess what I did? I asked, once again amusement entering into my tone. Jogo kept glaring at me, as if ready to throw me into molten lava the second he had a chance. After a silent wait, he finally spoke. A binding vow. Hee, you're indeed smart. Yes, I used a binding vow. Instead of making my trade on a value basis, I made a vow to make the trade on conditions. Jogo contemplated that, but couldn't figure out what that was supposed to mean. What's the difference? Let me explain. I offered. The first trade I made inside this domain is our movement. As you can see, it's restricted. Neither I can move, nor you. If one has to point it out, the value of this trade is on point. In general, it's fair to both sides. Jogo increasingly looked impatient. The second trade was to restrict domain amplification or any other sort of anti-domain techniques inside my domain. Once again, this goes both ways. Jogo's single eye immediately narrowed. He snorted almost. Why the hell would you use domain amplification inside your own goddamn domain? Hee. Well, true, but it's not as much a question of why would I use it, as it is can I use it. And I'm not just saying in terms of one can't use domain amplification inside their own domain, I replied with a smile. Jogo blinked. What does that mean? He replayed those words again in his mind, trying to figure out what the human meant until it finally clicked, and when it clicked, his eyes widened. You don't know amplification? Jogo wasn't asking, it was a statement. I nodded. But, that's not fair, you said the wager would be equal. He trailed off, recalling what the human said his binding vow was about, condition. The vow I swore was simple. I shall have the same condition on both sides of the trade, shall bear the same burden and restriction as my target of trade, as long as the value of the trade is a non. Now it doesn't matter whether I know domain amplification or not to trade away because we are not trading in value, instead on condition. Rather than giving up the technique itself, we are giving up the right to use the technique inside the domain. Either we can use it or not. It's more of an imposed restriction than an imposed trade, one which I am in control of, I sighed. Already ready to end this conversation. Jogo's face looked like he was ready to burst any second. Whatever, I don't care. We are both frozen. What are you going to do? If those two are your only trades, then you have nothing to attack me with. I'll just wait here until your domain collapses and then kill you and that woman you tried so hard to protect in front of your eyes, he shot back. TSK. Do you really think I made this entire plan to capture you without a way to end it? I snorted. Did you feel something wrong when you fought Dagon in his domain? I pointed out. As if thunder struck his mind, his eye widened to epic proportions, then shifted to my hands, which weren't quite on the domain hand sign by now as he thought they were. Both my palms were joined like I was praying. And then I tilted my joined hands forward towards him, pointing at him. Water? The one thing inside Dagon's domain which was missing was water. Jogo muttered with dread, finally building in. Yeah. I nodded. And at the same time, a shockwave of water erupted from my connected palms. I intentionally withheld him from using water, so I could use it as a one-time attack later. I'm sure you have seen this move before. I'm calling it piercing water. A sharp burst erupted from my hands and an arrow-like jet of water, condensed, lightning fast and deadly, rushed right at Jogo. Jogo's big eye saw the water beam in slow motion as it arrived in an instant at his eye with deadly force. Stand proud, Volcano Head, you are strong. Chapter 16. A miraculous disaster. Nanako and Mimiko stood side by side in the dim, ruined corridor of Shibuya Station, their attention fixed entirely on the unconscious body lying before them. Yuji Itadori, Sukuna's vessel, wasn't moving, his chest rising only faintly, his clothes torn and stained from the fight he had barely survived. The air around him still carried remnants of violence. There were more holes on the boy's body than the two girls combined. Blood pooled beneath him, and the boy's entire right shoulder was gone, completely dislocated and injured to the degree that he might think if he even so much as moved it, the entire arm was going to come falling off of him. They waited at first. They had expected something immediate, some violent transformation. Some overwhelming surge of cursed energy that would tear the silence apart and announce the return of the King of Curses. And to their credit, it did happen. The moment they fed the unconscious boy the one Sukuna finger in their possession, the cursed energy erupted out of him like a flood. It was malicious and overwhelming to the point they wished to just bolt out from there. However, they stayed. After all, there was a reason they were betting with their lives here. But after that surge, there was nothing. Instead, what they received was a brief, suffocating pulse of malicious energy that sent a chill crawling down their spines, sharp and unmistakable in its presence, leading to dying down into nothingness. The energy faded as quickly as it had come, leaving behind only the same heavy quiet. Nanako frowned, her eyes narrowing as she stared at Yuji's unmoving form. "That's it?" she muttered, the irritation in her voice barely concealed. "We fed him the finger. Why isn't anything happening?" Mimiko tilted her head slightly, her expression unreadable but her grip tightening around the rope in her hands. "Maybe it takes time," she replied, though there was little confidence in her tone. "Or maybe he's resisting." Nanako clicked her tongue, clearly dissatisfied with that answer. "Resisting? It's Sukuna. How is he still in control after that?" She kicked lightly at a piece of debris near her foot, her frustration growing with every passing second of silence. "This is pointless. We should have seen something by now." Mimiko didn't respond immediately, her gaze still fixed on Yuji as if expecting him to suddenly sit up at any moment, like a big bad villain ready to tear them apart on first sight. That didn't sound like something she wished to face, but unfortunately for both of them that was exactly what they needed currently. But the boy remained stubbornly, almost painfully human. No change in him. Inside Yuji's body, though, the situation was much different. Sukuna sat upon his throne of bone and shadow, one hand resting lazily against his cheek as he observed the girls with an expression of complete disinterest. Pathetic fools. Do they really think one finger is enough? If it was that easy to get control over this damn brat's body, then I would long have done so. He scowled. A low, almost inaudible scoff escaped him as his fingers tapped idly against the arm of his throne. For a fleeting moment, the thought crossed his mind to simply lash out, to send a dismantle tearing through the body from within and carve those two nuisances apart where they stood. Not like he can, but the thought was all that counted, right? The brat had to go ahead and lose against that cursed spirit, and now he lay dying. It was infuriating. Part of him wished to heal the brat, because that would be saving himself, at least part of him. But the satisfaction of seeing the brat dying was also enticing. So he waited. Just as he always did. There wasn't much to do inside the brat anyway, if only Yuji Itadori weren't someone who could have suppressed him, or better yet, the brat wasn't his vessel to begin with. It was clear that curses weren't very affectionate towards his vessel. Time passed, he waited for those girls to give up or finally kill the brat, when suddenly a surge of cursed energy rippled through Shibuya, distant yet unmistakable. He, of course, instantly sensed it and his blood boiled. He knew that cursed energy. Fushiguro Megumi. He grumbled, earlier irritation of being kept like a prisoner inside this brat's body turning into anger. Clearly, he wished to go there and see what that was about. He had sensed many things tonight. Curses, sorcerers, fragments of chaos scattered across the city. But this was different. One of Fushiguro Megumi's Shikigami, surely, but this was different. He could tell, there was a weight to it, a presence that stood apart from the rest. And that intrigued Sukuna. TCH. Useless brat, he once again cursed the annoying human who was currently his vessel. The first thing he was going to do when he got control over this body was to find a better vessel. XMC POV. My eyes were fixed at the non-existent stars up in the night sky, no doubt. City skies are the worst POS. The tall buildings already obstructed much of the view, and the little sky I had in my blurry vision, I couldn't spot a single star there. As for why stargaze? Because my body wasn't capable of doing anything besides that. Once I won, my domain cracked open, I just let go. Fell back with a thud, my body giving out. I just enjoyed the feeling of a hard-fought victory, the cold wind of Shibuya on my regenerating skin with relaxation. Yeah, I was healing. Slow, but it was there. Winning in a death trade does that to me. Perhaps it was the added vitality from the opponent or something else. I couldn't care less until it fixed me enough to make my way back to Maki and the others. They have a healer with them, right? What was her name? Shomo, Kosho, Shoko, something along those lines. Just gotta reach her and I will be fine. At least I hope so. Now that I had time to think upon, I had realized how easy it was to recall memories after hitting a bunch of black flashes. Those punches were really blessed. Unfortunately, I still couldn't remember my name. Shame, since I now at least know in whose body I was reincarnated. I was a nobody, honestly. No one I remembered from the show, though that can't be said with much confidence seeing I don't happen to have all the information about Jujutsu Kaisen. Still, I would rather use my own name when I recall it instead of the person whose body I was occupying. When I recall it, that is, the soothing feeling of my body slowly repairing was incredible. It didn't fix everything, of course, but at least my body was somewhat in working condition now. That was enough. The knockout after having my life threatened on 3 different occasions after coming to this world, and that too just under half an hour, was more than enough to make me lie there till morning if I had a choice. Unfortunately, I didn't dot a strong cursed energy signature, which I was getting rather good at spotting by now, broke my rest, bringing me back from dreamland to reality. Reminding me that this place was still just as dangerous. I slowly, with much effort, stood back up. Every part of my body protesting, begging for more rest, but I pushed through nonetheless. My eyes first fixed on the direction from which the energy signature came. Bad luck, there was a huge building in the middle to see anything. Good luck, because I don't intend to check whatever that was out anyway. If that were where trouble was, meaning it's the other way where I have to start walking. Before my feet lifted, my eyes fell on a scroll on the ground. My instincts told me it was trouble. That and my newly obtained senses about cursed energy both. Before I had a chance to find anything about this in my memory, which was much better now, I heard something. Are those wolves howling? Then silence. The sound came from the exact place I sensed that cursed energy from earlier. F***ck it, I'm getting out of. Crash. Before I could complete it, the said building shielding me from whatever the hell was going on the other side of it tore open and something blasted out of it, flying past me, engraving itself into the building behind me. Everything happened so fast that I couldn't even react. Turning back, I saw a big crater and in the middle a bloodied figure. A blond boy with markings on his face passed out. I could especially see the last of the marks from his face withering away, and then a chill ran down my spine when I heard strong, heavy footsteps from behind. Every fiber of my being told me not to look, don't look, but with shaky robotic shifts of my neck I turned, and what I saw left me hollow to my soul. A giant figure, with wings coming out of his face. Divine, almost. A big-ass sword attached to his hand and a wheel. Oh, that wheel. And that grin on that monster's face. My memories, for the first time, had to strain to know what I was facing. And knowing that just intensified the dread. From my core I just cursed. Damn you, Fushiguro. Chapter 17. Get help. Nanami walked along the quiet shoreline of a Malaysian beach, the evening sun casting a soft golden hue across the endless stretch of water before him. The rhythmic sound of waves gently meeting the shore filled the air, creating a sense of calm that felt almost foreign to him. For once there were no curses to exorcise, no urgency, no weight pressing down on his shoulders, just peace. The breeze carried the scent of salt and warmth, and for a fleeting moment he allowed himself to simply exist within that serenity. In that moment, he was lost to the world and found himself. His footsteps slowed as his gaze drifted toward the distant horizon, where the sky met the ocean in a seamless blend of fading light. It was there that he noticed a figure standing alone, partially obscured by the glow of the setting sun. Something about that silhouette felt familiar, though it took him a moment to place it. He narrowed his eyes slightly, focusing. Recognition came gradually, like a memory resurfacing from deep within. His eyes trembled at the image. It couldn't possibly be true, right? Hibara. The name left his lips quietly, almost uncertainly. Nanami. The figure stood there, just as he remembered, calling out to him with the same easy warmth that had never quite faded from Nanami's memory. There was something gentle about it, something that tugged at him in a way he had long since learned to ignore. Nanami. Yet now he found himself walking toward it. Step by step he approached, the sound of the waves fading into the background as his attention fixed entirely on the person before him. Hibara continued to call his name, his voice carrying across the space between them, unchanged despite the years that had passed. Nanami stopped only when he stood directly in front of him. His eyes still couldn't believe he was here. For a brief second neither of them spoke, then Hibara reached out. His hand grasped Nanami by the side with sudden force, the motion sharp and jarring as he shook him, still calling his name, his voice no longer distant but right beside him. Nanami! Wake up! And just like that, the illusion shattered. Nanami's eyes snapped open. The warmth of the sun was gone, replaced by the suffocating heat, discomfort, and the face of the distressed girl in front of him. The calm of the ocean was replaced by the fanatic urgency of the girl in front of him. Hibara was, of course, gone. In his place stood Maki. Her hand gripped his shoulder tightly, her body swaying slightly as she struggled to remain standing. Blood seeped through her side, staining her clothes, her breathing uneven from the strain. For a moment, Nanami couldn't process it. What was happening? His mind lagged behind reality, still caught between the dream and the present. Then it all came rushing back. The Shibuya emergency and the barriers surrounding Shibuya. Gojo being sealed. The newly awakened sorcerer they found in Shibuya Station. Then them facing two special-grade curse spirits one after the next. It surged through him all at once, no longer suppressed by the fragile illusion his mind had clung to. The left side of his body burned with unbearable intensity, his flesh scorched and raw. His left eye was gone, reduced to nothing, and the absence of it sent a disorienting wave through his senses. His hair on that side had been completely burned away, and his left arm hung uselessly, refusing to respond. Keeping breathing was a greater issue than remaining standing still. Nanami! Snap out of it! Maki shouted once again through gritted teeth. She had lost too much blood and her body was starting to fail. Damn, that one-eyed curse got me good, she internally cursed. She planned to go after the curse or Fushiguro, but her condition was getting worse. That curse spirit definitely pierced something important inside her body. And then there was Nanami, the older man, half-burned as he was, who suddenly got up and started to walk away. If she hadn't caught him in time, gods know where he would have gone in his days. Nanami gritted his teeth, forcing himself to remain upright despite the agony threatening to bring him to his knees. He lifted his head, scanning the area. "What's going on?" he asked. The special-grade curse spirit was gone. Only Maki stood beside him, injured but conscious, and a body lay a short distance away, unmoving and burned beyond recognition. Nanami didn't need to ask. Nabito Zenin. At least the body wasn't that disfigured that he couldn't tell that. Before he could gather his thoughts, the sound of approaching footsteps broke through the tension. Several figures rushed into view. It was the second-year students from Kyoto, their expressions tense as they took in the scene before them. It was Momo Nishimiya, Kasumi Miwa, and Mai Zenin. Maki. Mai's eyes widened as she rushed towards her big sister. "What happened here?" one of them asked with horror written into her face. Nanami remained silent. Neither did he have a complete answer, nor the strength to give them. It was Maki who spoke instead, her voice strained but steady as she began to explain. "A special-grade curse spirit attacked us. We took him down with some help, I'll explain later. But there is another. Even stronger," Maki pointed out with urgency. The Kyoto students and the one manager among them looked at the battered Maki and half-disfigured Nanami with abject horror, even trying to look at the burned corpse a few feet away from them, and gulped. "Where?" Maki just pointed where both that cursed spirit and that boy disappeared, with gritted teeth. "Fushiguro is handling an enemy without cursed energy, just like mine. He is extremely strong physically. He eliminated the first special grade we encountered. As for the other, who did this?" She pointed at herself, Nanami, and Nabito. And then pointed outside. "He dragged the special grade away with him," Maki said. this particular line while looking at Nanami. The others blinked. Wait. He who? How many people is she talking about? Is Fushiguro Megumi fighting two enemies? Nanami understood though. The boy? Nanami muttered with complicated feelings, of course, after knowing that the boy was capable of using a domain and even being capable of taking away their techniques inside his domain. There was no way Nanami was underestimating him. But to fight a special grade curse by himself. We have to give him reinforcement. He was just a civilian until now. We can't leave things on him, Nanami said, though he himself was in no condition to do anything. That's not possible, Nanami-san. All forces are already being deployed. We could only come here after we got the distress signal and eradicated all the curses from our side, Miwa pointed out. Where is Tadu? He is looking for Itadori Yuji. TCH. We need a plan, Nanami said with a helpless tone. I have the plan, we go and help them out, Maki snorted, already forcing her body to move and find that damn boy who didn't even have the decency to tell his name. Wait, where are you going? You need healing. You're going back to Shoko's, Mai tried to convince her, but the girl was too stubborn for her own good. She pushed her body on anyway at least until she collapsed after 2 steps. It wasn't the injury itself but the blood loss she had suffered which caused her to fall. Idiot, I told you. Come on, we have to take them to Shoko, Mai rushed into action. Nanami sighed. They were not in condition to join the fight. If they did, they would only be a hindrance in their condition. Any news of Satoru Gojo? He asked. None, Nishimiya shook her head. Damn it, Maki could only curse to herself. Her eyes were locked on the broken segment of the station building, glaring outside as if she could reach there just by watching. Don't die out there, you idiot. Chapter 18, All hands on deck. Boom. The world spun around me and everything became a blur before I found myself flying, weightless and moving faster than I ever had. The impact came before I could even process what had happened. My back crashed into the side of a building, the wall gave way, cracking into a million shattered pieces and a crater formed at the point of impact. Seconds later, gravity did its job and I hit the floor hard enough to knock the breath out of me completely, my lungs. Refusing to draw air as I lay there for a moment, stunned. The world rang around me, a sharp, high-pitched noise drowning out everything else as pain slowly began to seep in, spreading across my body like fire. I coughed a mouthful of blood out, my head spinning like I had recently attended an MLM gathering. Seriously though, what happened? I was there, standing peacefully, minding my goddamn business, and then that mother***er came crashing on the building side beside me and then... forcing my arms to move, I pushed myself up slightly, my vision swimming as I tried to focus on the disaster standing in front of me. Dust still hung in the air, drifting lazily. However, I saw it clearly no matter how much my eyes refused to accept the reality. 8-handled sword Divergent Sela Divine General, the crown jewel of the 10 Shadows technique and the Zenin clan, Mahoraga. At least I now remembered who he was. My memories were on point mostly. The Divine General just stood there, its massive form unmoving for just a moment as the wheel above its head remained unturned, almost mockingly calm as if I wasn't worth it. I wasn't. But damn it, my eyes stung, going hazy at the ordeal thrown at me one after another. Why me? What did I possibly do to deserve this? Does God not wish me alive or something, or what? If so, then be a man and tell me right to my face I'll give you my life. Stop making a game out of it. Tears unknowingly trailed down my cheeks. It wasn't about being afraid of dying. I was ready for it, but why after coming this far? What's the point? The injustice of it all made me rage out, wanting to complain to the high heavens, but there was no time to mope. The disaster was right in front of me. Just looking at it made something tighten in my chest, a quiet, creeping realization settling in that this one I won't be able to survive. Then it moved and I didn't even see the motion properly, only the result. One moment it was there and the next it was already in front of me, its blade descending in a clean, effortless arc aimed straight through me. My body reacted before I could think, instinct taking over as I threw myself to the side. The blade missed me by a fraction, carving straight through the ground where I had been, splitting the floor apart as if it were nothing. It was my instincts which once again saved me, my body moving on its own, out of the line of attack at the last possible second. If I had the luxury of it, I might even have made a Dragon Ball joke right now. I hit the ground awkwardly, trying to roll and create distance, but I was too slow. Something slammed into me from the side, the force of Mahoraga's backhand. hit like a collapsing wall, and I felt my body lift off the ground again before I was sent flying back out through the building once again, practically coming back to where I started from. For a second I just lay there, trying to breathe, trying to move, but everything felt heavy, like my body wasn't responding the way it should. Nothing was responding at this point as it should. Everything besides my godforsaken luck, that is. A big part of me just wished to give up already. There wasn't much left to live for here. There was no one in this world who I could call my own. The world was a big enough mess as it was. Dying was an easy way out. Gives me a reason to complain more when I go back up there, to the reincarnation management body. But damn it all, I didn't want to die. Not after coming this far. I inhaled sharply, filling my damaged lungs with oxygen. It hurt. A lot. But I did what I possibly could and moved my body. Tried to feel my cursed energy and reinforce it around me. Come on, one last time. Even if I'm dying here, I'll *King die fighting. My cursed energy obeyed, reinforcing me in time. I forced myself up, my arms shaking as I pushed against the ground, every movement slower than it should have been. My body was already breaking down. That earlier healing after winning against Jogo had long been tossed into the trash bin, and the fight had barely even started. Mahoraga stepped forward through the debris, closing the distance with the same steady, unstoppable pace. Think. What can I possibly do? My technique came to my mind, but it was on cooldown after using the domain on Jogo. Running wasn't a strategy. There was no way I could outpace him when it came to adapting. I barely dodged the next swing, the blade cutting through the air so close to me that I felt the pressure of it against my skin. The ground behind me split apart as the attack landed, and I stumbled back, struggling to keep my balance. I couldn't fight back. If I attacked, it would adapt. And if it adapts, I die just that much faster. **CK. So I kept moving, weaving and dodging as best as I could, relying entirely on instinct to stay alive. Another swing came, faster this time, and I ducked under it, my movements clumsy but just enough to avoid being cut down. A second attack followed immediately, forcing me to twist awkwardly, pain flaring through my side as I barely avoided it. The only saving grace I found was that Mahoraga wasn't adapting to anything yet. He just mindlessly kept on swinging at me. I had no doubt that he would start adapting if a few more of his hits didn't connect. Perhaps increase his speed, understand my general movement patterns, maybe even predict my movements. I was done for if that were to happen. I have to think of something fast. A glancing hit caught my shoulder, and I felt myself spin before crashing into the ground again. Everything was slowing down. That shoulder was definitely dislocated. My reactions, my body, even my thoughts were starting to lag, and I could feel it slipping away from me with every second that passed. Is this the end? Should I close my eyes and count to 10? I had no idea why in times like this my mind had to joke around, like saying you can't change the outcome either way, why not just accept it and have fun? Absurd as it was, I chuckled. A chuckle originating from the deep helplessness and despair my situation. And strangely enough, it really calmed me down. I gathered cursed energy onto my other arm and brought it down forcefully at my dislocated shoulder. Pain shot like a hot knife carving through my bones. Shouldn't have done it like that. But the act brought my focus back. Pain was indeed a useful tool at times. With clarity and focus, a plan started to form inside my mind. Dangerous as it was and my last-ditch effort to make it out of here alive. But I'll be damned if I at least don't give it a try. I slowly shifted my eyes and gritted my teeth. Mahoraga was almost on top of me again, the only grace I had being that he was aura farming and slowly walking towards me. I forced myself up again, stumbling backwards, my breathing uneven and ragged as I tried to keep moving, to keep space between us. My eyes also captured the slowly crawling figure of that blonde boy who brought this disaster here. He isn't dead? Then why is this asshole after me? Go after that son of a b***tch. I wanted to complain to Mahoraga but knew it was pointless. A dark part of me wished to know if I were to kill that boy and Megumi Fushiguro, then would this end? Would this monster go back to the same shadows he crawled out of? Most likely not. As I walked further, I was blocked by yet another building. A dead end. Turning around, I saw Mahoraga standing in front of me, its massive form unmoving as the wheel above its head turned slowly. What did he adapt to? A question which honestly didn't matter at this point. But still, curiosity kills the cat, I guess. Fine, let's give it all I have. Mahoraga raised his sword up high, ready to bring it down on top of me in one smooth swing and slice me in two. However, just as his hand was about to fall, to end my life and my struggles, he stopped midway. something tugged him from behind and suddenly he was yanked out of his place by his long snake-like tail at the back of his head, and then the entity went ahead and tossed the giant away like he weighed nothing. Already dying this soon. How fitting of a death for a human such as you, said my savior with clear disdain in his voice. That I couldn't care less about what he had to say though. I looked at him with distinct boredom, at how I had to face this face again so quickly. Less talking and more fighting. I pointed at Mahoraga, specifically at his head. Remember that Shikigami-ca. And adapt to your attacks and techniques. We have to end him in one attack. Huh, you mean I have to end him in one attack, while you get to survive, human? I rolled my eyes. Even after dying, this cursed sarcasm hasn't been lost. What will you do? He asked. I'll use the domain and stop him when you're ready. I'll need some time though, he scoffed at that. I glared at his one big eye and said seriously. Don't use your fire until you're ready for the final attack. Go all out and remember that sword in his hands. It emits reverse cursed energy. Stay away from it, I explained. He rolled his one big eyeball around, smoke emitting from his volcano head as he turned towards Mahoraga, who had already switched to the stronger target between the two of us. Take it seriously. If that sword catches you, you'll die. Jogo, or at least the sacrificial summoned version of him, looked down at Mahoraga and then the sword in the divine general's hand and then back to me. Nah. I'll win. Chapter 19. Joso Goat Sacrificial Trade. A kind of trade that allows the user of the Death Trade Curse technique to one-time manifest a copy of an entity previously defeated by the user inside his or her domain, at the cost of sacrificing any and all things obtained from the said entity. I honestly didn't even know that was a possibility. At least not until I hit those black flashes. It was really true when they say that a black flash in the world of Jujutsu is the single most important indicator to observe a sorcerer's potential and talent. The difference in understanding and control of cursed energy and technique for a sorcerer is like of heaven and earth before and after hitting a black flash. I hit 5 of them. Needless to say, if I'm not pulling shit like this out of my ass, then I'll be better off dead. It cost me though. To beat Jogo, to waste his domain, I had to give up on Dagon's powers, and now to beat Mahoraga, I am being forced to give up on Jogo's. My tired eyes lingered a little longer on Jogo, at the power I just forsook to survive, and then at Mahoraga, the culprit. Both Jogo and Mahoraga were glaring at each other with an intensity that could have melted their fraud allegations for once. Fraud? You ask, because neither of them actually ever won a fight against a really strong enemy. At least I don't remember them doing that in the anime. I could be wrong, of course. Another reminder that I might not have read the manga, since even after much probing at my memories, I couldn't see past what happened in Shibuya. While I was in my own mind, the two monsters didn't stand around for me to recover. 1 second they were standing in their respective places, and the next, both were gone. It was surprising that even Mahoraga, that hulking monstrosity, could move that fast. Was that what he adapted to before, speed? Jogo, though, was much faster than me. At least in raw speed. Both collided midway through their rush, fist to fist, generating a shockwave that left a mini crater behind on the ground after their collision. I gulped. Loss of Jogo's powers be damned. I was just happy that I wasn't the one facing that monster. And then what followed was what I would call a typical DBZ-style hand-throwing session between the two. Fast, accurate, and utterly painful when I recall how hard that bastard curse hits. Though maybe not as hard as Mahoraga. Ding, the wheel turned. Once, and the next fist connected directly with Jogo's face, sending him 10 steps back. If my eyes weren't playing tricks on me, I could see Mahoraga's body shifting ever so slightly. The body became slightly smaller and leaner, indicating it was adapting for speed and agility. His entire body changes? Is that how he adapts? I muttered in confusion. Oi, what the hell are you doing there staring? Join the fight. This is your life on the line here, you know. Jogo's sharp remark put a full stop to my train of thought. Yeah. I nodded, shaking off the random theories forming in my mind and struggling to get my half-broken, half-burned, completely uncooperative body to stand up. Every movement felt like walking on a track full of spikes with salt attached to them for an extra painful trip. Now was not the time to lose focus. Surviving came first. And with that thought, once again I asked myself, how can I beat Mahoraga? With Jogo's help, I knew I had the needed firepower. Hell, I always had it the moment I beat him inside my domain, but I can't use it. My technique was still on cooldown. I had to summon him so he could hold back the Divine General until my technique recovered. But can he? my eyes drifted to the top of Mahoraga's head. The wheel was still, no more adaptations. But it was only a matter of time before it spun again. Quit spacing out. How long until your technique recovers? Jogo snapped again. I'm uncertain. I have already strained my brain too much with back-to-back domain activations in the last half hour. I hated it, but I knew my condition best. If my estimation was right, I might not be able to open my domain again tonight. No, don't think that. There has to be a way. Do you have any attack that can take Mahoraga in one shot? Give me your best. Jogo just nodded. I knew it too, it was the one he used in the anime against Sukuna. His maximum technique. But that will take time for me to prepare. He won't let me. Jogo pointed at the Divine General, slowly walking toward both of us again, that if not for this monster's aura farming, I'd be toast by now. My lips pursed. Time, that was exactly what I was lacking. How long do you need? 30 seconds, give or take. Silence spread between us. It was only 30 seconds, but in front of that monster it felt like a huge chasm. A sense of desperation washed over me. The truth was right in front of me. To beat him I had to stall that monster for 30 seconds, just half a minute and I could win. But I knew for certain that in my condition, I'd die within just 5 seconds against him. My eyes trembled. For the second time since coming to this world, my body felt like it wasn't responding to me. Is this the gap between the strongest and someone weak like me? What are the odds we face? I never expected myself to be helping a human, you know. Suddenly, Jogo spoke, snapping me out of my thoughts. I glanced at him. Jogo's single eye was still on Mahoraga, but he continued. I always thought that we cursed spirits are the real humans of this world. I still do, and yet even after dying, being here is nothing more than a doll to save the one who killed me. How pathetic an end that is. But you know what? That just makes my belief even firmer that we cursed spirits are better than humans because we never stray from our goals and nature. We do what we are born to do and stick with it until the very end. Even now, under your control, doing your bidding, fighting to save your life, I still hate your existence. However, I'm here to protect you. And just like a cursed spirit, I'll give my all to do what I'm here for. That is our nature. We are true to ourselves, unlike you deceiving humans. I blinked. For a moment I didn't fully grasp what he meant. Wasn't he bound to follow my orders as a construct created by my technique? But then I realized Jogo was bound to obey, yes. But to speak like this, to show sentience, to assert himself, that wasn't the doing of my technique, that was Jogo, his lingering consciousness within the construct. He was helping me, even while declaring his hatred, because that was his nature. To give everything for his role. His identity. I clenched my trembling fist with whatever strength I had left. He was right. To lose fighting spirit by measuring the gap, that was cowardice. That's how losers think. The brave, they take the leap of faith, and they fly. 30 seconds it is. Good enough. Start preparing the fire, I'll ready the ingredients. I declared with determination, no matter how much my voice trembled, and I might be mistaken, but I could have sworn I saw his lips curl upward. Cooking. How ridiculous a notion. I expect nothing less from a human. But fine. I'll bite. Let's cook. Chapter 20, Trader's Gamble Strain. That is what I felt when I tried to open my domain. My brain was too overloaded by constant domain expansions to use my technique once again. It needed rest. I needed rest, but rest wasn't an option. At one moment, everyone seemed at peace, an intense stare down between all the participants of this deadly game, and the next it all exploded. Once again Mahoraga and Jogo moved first, and I followed, albeit at a much slower pace. My injuries wouldn't allow me to keep up with them no matter how much I tried to push my body. It was all a blur. 1 second the silence was overwhelming, and the next a booming collision sound echoed as Jogo once again collided with Mahoraga. However, this wasn't just a mere collision of force. Instead of taking it head-on, Jogo used his momentum to hurl himself upward behind Mahoraga after their attacks connected mid-air, at least for Jogo since he was much smaller. Mahoraga tracked his target, making an arc over him, his sword of extermination already swinging towards Jogo, but by then I was there. Har-ia! I rushed with all the momentum I could muster and tackled the giant's leg to slightly destabilize him. Honestly, it didn't even move the Divine General, but that slight destabilization allowed Jogo to avoid the sword brimming with positive energy. Mahoraga's attention shifted to me. Still no adaptation. He simply directed that sword in my direction. Just before the sword could connect though, Jogo was already back with a reverse dash, aiming right at Mahoraga's head and punching him with everything he had. The pure physical force from him made the monster take a single step back, but that was enough for me to get away in time. Jogo's attack, besides that, did nothing. But by doing so he was following exactly what I had asked him to do, not to use his technique, only hand-to-hand combat. He was at a serious disadvantage. We both were. Mahoraga seemed to contemplate between the two targets he had until he chose to fight the more troublesome one. The sword of extermination attached to his hand lit up with reverse cursed energy, aiming directly at Jogo. That strike could end it all. Or it could save the day. Just as the sword came down, Jogo was ready. With all of his reactive instincts he had developed while fighting me, he shifted sideways. Unfortunately, he wasn't fast enough. The sword still grazed his arm, but the positive energy did the rest. It outright obliterated the core structure of his arm, which was a pure cursed energy construct, like most cursed spirits are. The arm didn't cut open like it normally would have. Instead, it just blasted apart and then dissipated. Jogo's single eye went bloodshot instantly, but still he didn't step back. Instead, he moved in and, with all of his cursed energy reinforcement, punched the Divine General right in the face, jolting him back. Mahoraga took only one step back before his sword hand was once again raised in the air, ready to make the next strike count. "Now!" Jogo shouted, and I was waiting for this exact moment. I came from behind the Divine General, used his snake-like tail attached to his head like a ladder, and with a sharp and very disrespectful stomp on his head, pushed myself upward, directly at the raised arm. I clamped tightly around the damn sword of extermination and pulled the arm off course the moment Mahoraga brought it down on Jogo. The ground split open by what little exposed tip of the sword was left behind. The rest was completely hugged tightly by me like I was a koala. A childish action. But that saved Jogo from exploding just like his arm. Mahoraga, upon this, let out an indignant sound that almost sounded like a snort. Before his other giant hand could snap at me to forcefully rip me apart from the sword, Jogo was already on top of him once again, delivering a punch directly to the Divine General's face. The force was similar to before. Mahoraga had to take one step back. That was the extent of what Jogo could do, and that too only because Mahoraga had adapted himself to be a bit thinner and faster. However, that earlier adaptation let him grab Jogo this time midway and throw him away like an annoying bug. Then he swung his sword hand, trying to make me lose my grip and let go. I held on for dear life until finally he couldn't take it anymore, and the wheel on top of his head spun once again. I entirely missed the spin due to the unannounced experience, similar to an amusement park ride I was experiencing on his hand. And then suddenly the metal of the sword heated up. So hot that even my already insensitive burned skin felt like it was on a frying pan with the stove on. By instinct, I had to let go of the sword. It couldn't have been at a worse moment since Mahoraga hadn't ended his thrill-seeking ride for me. I was thrown at the nearest building yet again, stopping only after completely and utterly ruining its outer wall. By now I had no idea how many times I had experienced being smashed into a building. I wasn't even angry about it anymore. I smelled smoke. My hands, which had held onto the sword, were smoking with burned flesh black as charcoal. Mahoraga turned towards me but then went back to his original target. In his eyes I was no threat. Jogo was already on the move though, fully embracing the hit-and-run tactic. But Mahoraga was faster after that one adaptation. Before he could run away, Mahoraga was already on top of him, sword of extermination once again ready to cleave him in half. Just as Jogo was about to take a permanent leave from this fight, a large destroyed section of a broken building wall was sent flying at Mahoraga, crashing onto him. Once again Jogo was spared. Why the sword of extermination? Mahoraga made a grunting sound as if annoyed. He turned around and there I was, standing and smoking like a freshly delivered piece of meat. However, not all smoke comes from fire. Some came from my healed wounds. Thanks for the heal, man. God knows I needed that. I grinned. Yup, it was the sword of extermination. Jogo too sighed in relief at how the crazy plan worked. It was a rather simple, suicidal idea. Everything depended on Mahoraga using his sword with positive cursed energy output to deal with a curse like Jogo. He did exactly that, and since it was an output-type RCT, known by how Jogo's arm exploded, I knew it would heal too. The healing wasn't nearly enough, but I could feel my body at least in a somewhat working state. That was enough. Something seemed to change inside Mahoraga at that moment as the wheel on top of his head rotated once again. What he adapted to, no one knew but him. Instead of going after Jogo, he rushed directly at me. "Ah, come on, are you serious now?" I gritted my teeth and poured all my cursed energy into reinforcement since there was no outpacing that force of nature. Mahoraga appeared on top of me in an instant. He was fast, very fast. And the next second his mountain-sized fist came crashing down on my head like a hammer falling from heaven. With all my might I blocked. The impact was bone-shattering, if any were left intact inside me by now to begin with. My legs gave out, and from the sheer might of that blow, the ground beneath me shattered and I dropped to my knees. The taste of iron pooled into my mouth as blood surged out. I felt like my entire body had been hit by a moving train. My hands, they were shaking like leaves about to fall. My mind hummed with a buzzing noise. It took me some time to recover from that blow, but Mahoraga wasn't done. I saw his leg raised right above my kneeling self. Instincts once again came to the rescue, and by sheer survival threat, cursed energy surged once again around my body. I swear I'm cutting open Fushigiro's fingers so he isn't summoning anyone ever again if I survive this. And then the divine general mercilessly crushed me beneath his foot. The blow was so heavy that even my knees gave out, my stance completely broken as I was driven into the ground. Only my hands, shielding my chest, held on before giving in and folding inward under the pressure of that foot slam. Blood poured out of my mouth. My eyes went blank for a second under such a heavy impact. My entire body shook, but Mahoraga was still not done. He raised his sword this time, ready to end this in one sweeping attack. My eyes snapped to the sword. I had to move. I knew if I didn't I was dead. I had to move. Move, goddammit. I twisted my body to the side, missing the sword of extermination by a hair's breadth. At least most of it. A stinging pain rang through me. The sword barely touched my side, but it tore right through. Pain struck like a lightning bolt, and with pain came anger, so much anger. At myself, at this situation, at freaking Megumi Fushiguro, at that blood-deep mess who dragged Mahoraga onto me. It needed an outlet, and the best one I knew was to punch it out. So, eyes bloodshot and hostility fueling my negative emotions, I did just that. Instincts alone were enough to gather my cursed energy into my fist, and just like back when I punched those cursed spirits in the underground floors of Shibuya Station, out of sheer desperation to survive mixed with anger, I punched directly at Mahoraga's face, which was much closer due to him lowering the sword toward me. A snapping sound rang out. I felt a jolting vibration, very familiar to me. Cursed energy collapsed into itself and then, like a burst, lashed out. Space itself wrapped around my fist, and in the next moment, black lightning tore out from it. Black flash. Once again, it hit Mahoraga right on the head. For the first time, sending the behemoth flying back. As if my dead brain cells had awakened, my mind snapped into place, and everything started to make sense. I lay there, eyes open, fists still in the air with black lightning around it. And for the first time during this fight, I felt like I can do it. Both Mahoraga and I simultaneously got up. I supported my bleeding side and looked at the divine general, who was grinning as usual at me as the wheel on his head spun once. Adapting to Black Flash, tch, such a cheater. I couldn't help but scoff. But then a similar kind of grin spread across my face. Jogo, who was sidelined all this time after being thrown into a building, was finally on the move. He rushed at Mahoraga at lightning speed, ready to deliver the attack. Jogo. However, I stopped him midway. He snapped at me like I had lost it. What? I grinned at him and simply said, "Do it." He blinked, pursed his lips for a second, and then determination showed on his face. "Very well. I hope you survive, human," he replied, and then for the first time during this fight, fire erupted out of him, not for attacking but from his palms slamming down on the ground like thrusters to launch him into the air. Mahoraga, of course, saw this. But he didn't go after Jogo. I was his target now, especially after that black flash. My own eyes snapped to him. Grinning all the way, hands raised up, forming a familiar hand sign. My brain immediately sent out warning signals. It wasn't ready to handle another domain expansion just yet. Not even after a black flash. I knew it. But I don't care. Just as Jogo said, I have to give my everything. Find a way. There is always a way. Stay true to your nature, and I'm a trader. Trade it then, trade something for this life-giving grace. Domain expansion, death trade.